Hey, Jill. All right, do we have everyone? We're all good?
Yep.
Yep, we are ready.
Awesome. Yes, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October board meeting here for AAPA. Hope everyone's doing well, and we'll go ahead and get started here with our meeting this evening. First thing on the agenda, if we can go ahead and do our pledge of allegiance and our moment of silence, and we'll continue on from there.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, first thing on the agenda tonight is if I can get a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 8th agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Do you have anyone written down for public comments this evening?
No,
No.
sir.
No. Thank you. All right. Next thing on the agenda here is to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting that was presented and in our board packet. I'm going to pull those up for a few minutes here.
Let's see, I read those before I came. I don't have a copy in front of me, but when time has elapsed here for the others to read it, I can make a motion. Oh, here's a copy. I can make a motion,
Okay.
and I'll wait for your cue on that.
I'll go ahead and put a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented in our packet from our last meeting in September 3rd of 2024.
I think we actually had no misspellings of board member or guest names, so that seems to be our most persistent problem with the minutes, I've noticed, but, so we're getting better.
All right. Yeah, we're going to put a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 3rd, 2024 presented.
Do we have a motion? We need a second.
Oh, yeah. I think we just need a second, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second. I got a motion. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Second.
yeah, sorry.
You're good. We have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Oh, you hear it? Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
We're good.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right. All right, next thing on our agenda this evening, we have our CEO report. You can pull up for a few minutes here.
Giving them a voice.
Yeah, hard to hear it.
not, I'll go ahead and put a motion to approve the CEO report as presented this evening.
Okay, I will be glad to second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. For any further discussion?
Let's see, I do have some questions, which
Go ahead.
I think
Yes.
would fit in here. I did notice that we're apparently using some subs, or we have in July and August, that were not our building subs. Is that, I don't think that's like a problem or anything, but I just noted that. Is there a reason why we're going back to that, or?
It's just our normal operating. We've not gone away from the auto, so we only have one building sub at the elementary
Oh, okay.
as a permanent building sub, and the rest of ours are basically on that independent list. We're not using Kelly's sub services anymore.
Right, we dropped them.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we're just with our normal part. Some of the things, and I know you'll hit some of it in your financial report as well.
I try to get some of these minor things, maybe with the
Yeah.
CO report, get them out of the way.
Yeah, so I talked to Bookkeeping Plus. In one of our previous board meetings, I guess last spring, we had talked about wanting to break some stuff out a little bit more. So surprise, they did it in our August financials. And so I talked to her about, can we put things back in the categories they go, because it looks wonky. So we're gonna work through that. I meet with her on Thursday, and we're gonna go through some of that, but it's
And
not.
well, let's
a
see,
different
that sort
expense.
of ties in with that. And again, these are not problematic issues, they're just new things that I hadn't seen before. I noticed that under contributions and donations, which certainly we could use a lot more of,
Of course.
that's just kind of a small amount for us right now, but you have a new line item called student fundraising, and down in the other income, we're calling it other, which I deduced from the amount was our standard fundraising. And then we picked up two new line items, sports and athletic fees, look like a one-shot deal. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, that was part of that adjustment, and I said that's not actually gonna give us any meaningful information.
Okay, so
tonight.
those are costs that were sort of embedded in a larger account
Yes.
before. Well, they
Yeah.
don't bother me if they're useful, but
I
I don't know.
I don't,
If they were
I don't
just
know
put
that-
in there from last time, when we
Yeah.
talked about last year, I can easily total them up, like I said, Jill and I talked today, and I will, I was just giving a little bit more of a breakdown, because there were some times you were asking on how much were, like, sports and things like that, so
Mhm.
that's why we broke it out. But it's easily to put it back, it's definitely not a problem.
Well, I have no problem with it if, I favor that approach. I mean, if there's items that often come up for question, I mean, you know, our cash flow spreadsheet is long enough anyhow, it's a few more line items, but we should make it useful for, you know, so things we have frequently question, it'd be nice to have it out for us, so
yeah.
do whatever you guys want, I have no problem with it.
And what I'll do is I'll subtotal that category, so it doesn't look weird with the budget.
Yeah, because some of it, like, if you look at it just at that first pass, it looks, you'll see it in the expenses side too, where it's like, oh, this looks like an unbudgeted expense, but it's really broken up, it goes to the category
Yeah,
above it.
yeah, they're small amounts, so again, not really
Yeah.
troublesome. Other than I think the enrollment question that, which I don't know if we want to talk about that any at this point, or wait till we get into the treasurer's report, whatever
Yeah, I think-
fits the
Yeah.
best here, if you have any comments to make on that.
Well, and I mean, I went pretty in depth last month in my report, and I went ahead and kept that language in there about to the root cause analysis that we've done on that. I will say we currently have 13 kids going through our enrollment process. We had 8 kids trying to enroll on October 1st, which was count day, and we could have acted in a little different way that probably wouldn't have held up to one of those integrity tests,
No.
where we need them to go
Yeah,
through
we
the
don't
full.
wanna
part, right? But, oh, you can get them in on count day, but that's just not who we are as an organization.
Right, the count's the count, we're
Yeah.
not trying to.
In review of the membership report that the state has, because they pull it from our student information system, I did find 3 students today that are enrolled and were enrolled October 1st and were in attendance that are currently being excluded. So
They
those
may
3
have been hiding in the restroom or something. I
maybe.
don't
I
know.
was like, I said, one of them, he has the cutest little curls. And I was like, I know I've seen that kid.
Yeah.
Like, I just saw him. He didn't leave. And so we actually discovered
Get him
that.
in for, we need all the numbers we can get.
Yeah. And, working through those, right, like the variance, it's a thing. It's not going to be like a big end all be all for us or all that. We're always prepared for the fluctuation there. And because we keep getting more enrollment, I got 2 more today of like the inquiry. We had 2 tours for maybe 3 kids at the elementary today. So we're at 4 of them. And so it's just kind of how it goes for us.
It's a difficult projection to make.
It is, and as we, especially this year, are dealing with some interesting social media discussions and things like that, we've not been in that territory for quite a while. And so it has made us obviously analyze what's going on, how information is being shared with families, how we can combat some of that information that is being sent out or maybe misrepresented, but also making sure that we love on and serve the kids that are here. Those are our kids. That's who we're here for. And I think we've made good decisions. I know we lost a couple right before count day due to some pretty extreme behaviors, and they didn't like that there would be consequences for said behaviors. And I know that there are some organizations that would have been like, okay, well, we're just going to ignore that information. We're just going to put it off until next week or whatever, get them in, get them out, and then deal with it. And that's just not who we are.
Well, that's not consistent with, I think, our mission and our image that we've always maintained from the beginning, that we're not pretending to be a school for everyone. And those that have disabilities, have problems, we're very happy to work with them and help them if they're willing to work with us. But again, we are a school of choice, and
Well,
no need to apologize for somebody that.
yeah, and I feel like I
fit
need
in.
to put that out there publicly because there's been a lot of misinformation about charters where
Yes.
they're seat fillers or they're delaying some of those decisions until they get here, right? Like that's some of that misinformation that's starting to go out again. I'm like, that's not APA, right?
Right.
We aren't going to play the game. We aren't going to manipulate the system. And, if that means we lost a couple kids about it, then we're going to keep 50 kids because we ensured a safe environment for them. And because we acted with integrity and didn't just hold off to get the money from the kid and then bounce them, right? I think that says a lot about us as a school. And so it's one of those things where I know we're doing the right thing, and we have seen a lot of growth in the kiddos we have this year so far. We've seen a lot of cool programming and things happening, and we know those numbers are going to fluctuate, and we'll just weather that storm as it comes. And
That's something that I've noticed with the social media. There's always going to be negative comments on social media in every school corporation and every personal life for that matter.
oh yeah,
There will always be something no matter where we're at, or and it's here to stay. It's not
Right,
going
and that's
anywhere.
where I think
But-
you have to be careful when you're taking surveys, getting interviewing opinions. I'm not a marketing expert by far, but I've always said that before you do such surveys and questionnaires, you better know your audience pretty well, because you can't take everybody's opinion and what they say at face value. You need to you have to kind of screen through and shift to make sure you're getting a a good full picture of what's going on, so.
And I've really enjoyed seeing the influx of the positivity of this, what all of the activities that the school does.
Yeah.
This year alone, I've seen that just increase a lot. And it is fun to see what the kids are doing in the schools and outside the schools, such as the Chicago trip, or, you know, what CAP is doing with that variance of activities that they do. It is nice to see more of that, including all of the sports, you know, kind of pushing that out there, because, you know, sports is where a lot of kids are, and that's what they want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been nice because I'm glad that you said that, because the strategic planning process that we've gone through over the last several years, and we want to add this program, we want to do this, we want to find this, and to actually see a lot of it in action this year, especially, and I will give a public shout out to Cameron Moore. He's one of our social studies teachers at the high school, and he is taking our push for project-based learning and STEM education and putting it in a history classroom where our kids were studying Greece, and so they were actually cooking Greek food, like authentic
Yeah, I saw that
Greek
on
food,
Facebook.
right?
I used to teach that subject, so I was interested with what he was doing there. So.
Yeah, and he just covered the Renaissance around the 11th century, I believe, with his AP World History, which is the Chicago trip. It went on Saturday. We drove 21 kids up to Chicago. We took them to the University of Chicago for basically a campus tour. We took them to Navy Pier. We took them to medieval times. So, you know, really good to see that Renaissance part play out, which I was assured that this was historically accurate as well as actually based on a true story. I don't know. I went with it. But getting to see our kids, one, leave Anderson, right? Some of them had never been there. To get to hear how they responded to seeing Lake Michigan for the first time, and then see them at University of Chicago. Our kids are phenomenal always. To see them wandering around Navy Pier and, you know, in and out, and not having to be worried about behavior or, hey, they're going to sneak off and go try to do this, right? It was very refreshing. And then medieval times, I was like, as we walked in and this person's like, hello, milady, I could feel myself going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to process all of this language and whatnot. And I thought, oh man, the kids are probably going to think, they might think this might be a little lame, a little too much. They were like cutthroat, cheering for our night, like ready to just go and do all the things. They were so excited about it. And we had no issues, right? No behavior, no like people walking on the other side of the street when they see us coming, right? Our kids were just what APA kids are in public. And it was a relaxing time. We went, did the thing, got them all fed, got them back on the bus. They were same 21 that we arrived with. We did have some kids kind of infiltrate our group at University of Chicago. I'm like, please don't let them on our bus. I don't know who they are. They got lost. It's fine. We adopted them for a little bit. But yeah, to see the learning and see kind of that new programming and the stuff we've worked so hard on over the last couple of years, that is helpful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. No, Claire left her baby dragon that she ate.
That was freaking me out.
It was Cornish hen.
So as they're like, here, this is leg of dragon, or this is a dragon scale, or this is half of a dragon egg, which was a potato, and I'm like, I'm struggling. I know that's a potato, but I'm hearing dragon egg. Yeah. So, but they had a great time, and yeah, so that was good. And we won our sectional game last night for soccer.
Yeah, I saw that paper.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good job. So.
Good.
All right. Well, other questions. Sorry. CEO report. Back on topic.
I have nothing else on the CEO report.
Okay.
Any other further discussion? If
Sure.
a motion to approve the CEO report as presented.
I'll make a motion to
All in favor,
approve.
say aye.
Oh, yeah, I think we're at the motion.
You did ask for a motion.
We're good.
We may have,
Weirdness out here.
we may have
Brian.
discussed a little too long and we lost track there where we were.
It's all right.
All right, any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, she'll make that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next thing on the agenda is our financial report for August 2024, our board treasurer and our report as well. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Ashby.
All right, I think everyone that is here has a copy of, I call it my script, or you could call it my notes or cheat sheet or whatever, but you can follow along with me as we go through this. And also, I think Sunday night I did send out my usual pre-meeting financial review. So a lot of we try to just focus on the key metrics here, but if there's detail that you have an interest in, it probably is in there. Feel free to peruse that, and if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know at any time. Okay, now let's see. We always start with our latest year-end cash basis projections. Frankly, not a lot can be gathered about where we're going to be in June 30th from July and August for obvious reasons. We're just starting up with the school year. And then, of course, we do now know pretty much what our first official ADM count will be. Without that piece of information, you really could not make any definitive conclusions. So, but we will go ahead and take a look at the August results, both monthly and projected year-end. Not as much clutter this time. Since it's early in the year, we haven't had any payroll malfunctions or any of those quirky entries yet that tend to be a little bit confusing, so that's pretty good. Quite frankly, between last board meeting and this board meeting, not a lot of changes. Basically, about 6,000 change in total income, 28,000 additional cost. Not much change, nor would we expect there to be. And then, as we explained it with some detail last month, our cash flow spreadsheet, which we have in our board package, for our guest here, that's a big, long horizontal sheet that some of us almost need an electron microscope to read, unless we blow it up real big. But anyhow, the wording on that is a little different, but what we're using as a budget is, I call it our 24-25 budget on a cash basis. And just to review, you'll recall that we had a perplexing accounting situation in May because the board has always said, well, we don't want to approve a budget that isn't balanced, break even, or hopefully better. But we want one that's realistic too. But because of, I call it the timing mismatches, where we have the fortune of getting a large award towards the end of a prior year, but we know we're not going to use all of it or most of it till the next. We had a situation that we resolved by basically using the accrual term would be a deferred revenue account, or on our cash basis spreadsheet, we do have some titles, Title I, for example, that has always allowed us to carry forward any funds that we have qualified for or earned, let's say, but have not used yet into the next year, although albeit the amounts are usually not quite that large. So by doing that, we did, I think, came up with about a $6,000 pre-tax cash profit, which we did approve. And in my last pre-market or pre-meeting report, I did run several different columns and scenarios to prove, at least to my satisfaction, that all of the results were the same, except for the difference in how that troublesome mismatch and carry forward was handled. Essentially, it's the same cost, same income, except for that. So hopefully we don't need to, I think we've pretty much explained that in the past. So let's see, right now we are on a cash net income basis, we're looking at a loss of, I'll round up, about $403,000. Which actually is better than what our cash or our budget would have been on a pure cash basis, because it would have been a little over $500,000. Now, the thing that you have to be careful with when looking at such numbers is you need to understand the accounting, the adjustments. You need to be able to understand the true economic reality. So, for example, if you keep going, and our ending cash balance then we think is going to be about $390,000. And then you'll notice I have a line that says add back charter school facilities grant expenditures. Now, we know that that grant was a cash award in the amount of $519,996. And it appears that we did actually spend about $47,000 of that last year. So this year we're going to spend the rest of it, and that total then would be $473,000. Now, if you take that out of the equation, or rather take that out of the cash loss, then actually based on just the results before the ADM count, we actually are a little bit ahead with about a $70,000 cash profit. So that's why we do a lot of educating here when we do our treasurer's reports. We want to educate ourselves and educate everybody to know how to read all of the numbers that we get, because if you really don't understand, sometimes you can draw very wrong conclusions. But we know one number that always is very important and doesn't change regardless of accrual or cash basis accounting, and that is our ending cash balance. So we do always keep our eye closely on that metric. Now, as we go down, there's some other items that we try to track during the year. Sub-expense, a little early to draw any conclusions there. We're very pleased on our health insurance premiums, which we're getting through the marketplace. I corrected my error last meeting. I was thinking it was self-insured because I got the impression we had to post a bond. I know that's what you have to do if you're self-insured. We're not, but we are part of the marketplace. And last year, after payroll deductions, our net health insurance cost was about $477,000. And it looks like we might come in with about $293,000. So that will be a welcome change for us, and let's hope that that we can continue to reap the benefits of these additional insurance coverages. Let's see, and then of course when you do the marketplace, you do have a third-party administrator that does a lot of the clerical insurance work, and they don't usually work for free. So the deal is $85 a month per covered employee, and we have usually, I think historically, 50 to 55 employees, which is maybe around half. And so that number's about the same here. Not everybody that works here has opted to take our insurance. So the fees look about $52,000 a year, more or less. Okay, now continuing down, then we go to the month of August itself. Our debt service coverage ratio. It's too early. That is a cumulative ratio, and that's too early in the year to draw many conclusions. But we do know that it's based on accrual numbers, and so we can't easily calculate it from our cash flow statement. We're required to have 1.25 times. And we do know that last year, and our banker's aware of this, everybody knows about it, because we had at the last minute, we made
to clarify everything so it was presenting an accurate reflection of what we're really doing economically, we basically booked the deferred revenue. We took a little over $500,000 out of our cash income out of income, and we put it over in that short-term liability account. The logic being that now we have the liability to spend that money as has been prescribed for us to do so. So that's our liability, and then that will, as we spend it, pay the bills to the contractors, will filter back into to income. The problem with that was that it did we didn't come close to meeting that 1.525 ratio. 0.47, I must say that is a new low, but that's the only reason we didn't make it. And when you have a good reason, that makes all the difference in the world. So we're not going to worry about that, but one does always want to be, you don't take false assurance for a cumulative year-to-date number unless you forecast it out. So anyhow, enough of that. Let's go to August here. August, actually July and August, not too much. The big story of August can be described in one word. We were getting Christmas in July. Now we got it in August in the form of the first installment of our innovation grant. And I've got that in bold print somewhere. $595,000. And I think we get the next one hopefully in January, I believe. So that made all the difference. We were originally forecasting a loss of $461,000, but when you get over $500,000 given to you, that does help. And so we ended up with a cash net income of $218,000. Now in September, you'll notice that we go back to the more typical fall form, where when we have no big grants coming in, we are looking at maybe around a $239,000 loss, which would leave us with cash of about $630,000, which is a good figure. Although again, those higher numbers are not going to be what we're forecasting. I think hopefully we mentioned our latest end of the year cash balance forecast is $390, if I forgot to mention that. Again, there's more detail. If you have questions or want additional information on August, you can plow through the financials in my pre-meeting report. And we do also always report the number on an accrual basis. And also the accrual was pretty solid, $306,434. One of the biggest differences, other than timing of earnings and et cetera, between cash and accrual counting is the depreciation of fixed assets. If you were wondering, our depreciation expense runs about $31,000 a month. Now, the bottom part here, this is my estimate. And this was estimated as let's say a stock analyst or an outside investor might, based on whatever information has been given to us. So I'm not pretending that these are exact figures. So we have plenty of experts here that I'm sure will be refining those. But I did try to determine what the possibilities were in revenue that we might lose based on the number of students that, well, let me start off with, and I don't want to go into great detail here, but we had budgeted for 830 students. And that was a very good figure because that had been very consistent with the number that has held for the last 3 or 4 years. Now, I know we have some friends from Ball State with us this evening, and I know they have talked with us about, well, what kind of strategic discussions has the board had down through the years? Well, one discussion that we always have is what do we think is going to be our final sort of semi-permanent enrollment level? When we were a brand new school, we got up over 900 kids. We were the new thing and everybody wanted to try us out. And then they found out that some said, oh, they want only serious students, or that's not a reform school. A lot of people got that idea. Of course, the numbers went down a little bit. But what we have found is that we will have steadiness around a certain enrollment number for 2 or 3 years. Sometimes then it will suddenly spike. And we also have had occasions where, for no obvious reason or pre-warning, it goes the other way, which obviously plays havoc with our income coming in, and then, of course, will hurt our bottom line. We've been there before. We've dealt with it. I think from a strategic standpoint, what the board and what management, and with the help of Bookkeeping Plus, what we need to do is determine as best we can, does this represent a new shift? Is this a one-offer, I think I called it, or is it another permanent shift? I don't think the population of the city of Anderson or Madison County is growing much. I don't know, it may have declined. We're all subject to demographics. So we don't know yet, but certainly I know that has been one of the things the board has always focused on. Some of you remember Dr. Quaishi from AU. He was very strong on that proponent. Who are we, and what is our true permanent enrollment level going to be? Well, we don't know, but it may be changing, and when it changes, we will have to change with it, unfortunately. Sometimes it's hard to shift gears on short notice like that, but we will deal with that, and I'll let you guys go through the numbers. I hope they're reasonably accurate, but obviously if you lose 10, 20, 30 people below what you budgeted, it's going to hit on the top line, which is going to carry all the way through the bottom. And so that's about all I think I can say. Jill has addressed it. I know we're going to be huddling with Bookkeeping Plus, and I think we're looking at what I think is our third amended budget, because variance analysis can be a very good management tool for us. But if some assumption gets out of whack, either our enrollment's higher, at one time we had to amend because it was higher than what we thought, and this time lower than what we thought, there's no help in trying to compare budget with actual. So I think we're headed in that direction again. So I think that has covered just about everything. Bookkeeping Plus, hopefully, I'm not trying to play it. I'm often confused, or sometimes I've been accused of being an accountant or CPA. I think when you're short and bald and wear glasses sometimes, and, they find out you used to be a teacher or something. I don't know. They seem to think I'm an accountant, but I'm not trying to play one. But hopefully my estimates weren't too far off. The one unknown I had was, of course, how would a less than expected enrollment play on things like our innovation grant, CTE. I may not have fully captured the full impact, or I may have understated, but we will work with it, we will deal with it. So that's, I think, all I have.
We'll be meeting on Thursday.
Yeah.
And we'll go over that, and innovation is impacted by that, but we'll be.
Oh,
taking care
good,
of all those.
okay, well, that's some good news. Yeah. So if there's any other questions, or feel free to, I didn't try to cover every little detail, but if there's anything else that we need to ask, question, I mean, feel free to jump in, so.
right, but if not, thank you, Mr. Ashby, as always, for that. I appreciate that. No further questions. I'll put the motion to approve the board treasurer report and the August 2024 financials as presented tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the financial report.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ashby, as always, and thank you, Beth, and Bookkeeping Plus also for what you guys do as well too. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Have a safe night. All right. The next thing on the agenda under new business is our APA spotlight for APA Elementary. Mr. Kaplan Stottlemyre. Good evening.
Hi.
Oh, here, let me get out of your way here. You want me to move?
Okay, I can
Got
stand.
plenty of empty seats here. Let's go back here.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to make sure nothing wonky's gonna pop up.
I hope not.
Look, technology is in our favor today.
Ryan, I don't know if you can watch this with us or not.
I can watch it right here.
Okay, oh, okay.
I think he can see it.
Oh,
Ryan
very
can
good.
see it.
You have to turn around. You feel free to turn around.
I can see.
Okay.
This is good. Okay.
Okay. that works. All right.
Oh, there we go, screen to screen.
He's seeing this screen
Look at
here.
that.
That's
All right.
your ability.
Very creative. All right.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. So,
Surprised anybody in the audience can guess where he's calling from.
Yeah.
Bangor, Maine.
Oh, wait, you didn't
Yeah.
I was gonna guess.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, very random.
And he's bringing us all lobster too.
yes.
We're gonna add it to the ice cream and steak dinners that Elise and I are owed.
Uh-huh.
All right. We'll go ahead and get started and highlight some of the things that have happened at the elementary since the last time we presented. I think the last time we presented was January. I think was the last time we were here in our monthly cycle. So appreciate the time. So we'll go ahead and get started. So starting off the year, so where we are enrollment-wise, so we have 281 cadets in person. We have 10 virtual students, so a total of 291. This is our picture of our class of 2037. So these are our new kindergartners. They each get their own t-shirt that says class of 2037. So this is them the first week of school getting their shirts for the first time. So this is the second or third time we've done this, so it's been a pretty fun tradition that we started at the elementary, carry over from last couple of years as well. So as we approach this new year, so there has been a lot of changes at the elementary. So we have a lot of new faculty and staff. And we know that for several reasons, we had staff leave us for life changes, retirements, babies, career changes and stuff like that. So we had to fill a lot of positions. And with that can come a lot of uncertainty, but with all the new staff that are coming on board, you could feel new energy. The whole building feels different with all the new teachers, the new, I'm new in my position this year, new SPED director this year, lots of new things in place. And what's really exciting about our new faculty and staff at the elementary, with the core teaching staff, with the 10 new ones, 3 are brand new to APA. So that means the other 7 had some type of connection or affiliation with APA already. So we hired a lot of people from our STAR tutoring program after school. So they were already coming into our building 2 or 3 times a week, working with our most at-risk students, being familiar with our building. So that was kind of a seamless transition into the classroom because they kind of knew our clientele, knew our building and stuff like that. We also hired 2 student teachers. So we hired one from Ball State, we hired one from Anderson University. So again, they already had some time in classrooms learning our culture, learning some of our policies and procedures and going from there. So that really helped with this transition because although they were brand new to the first year of teaching, most of them, they weren't new to our facilities, the staff and stuff like that. And so our main focus this year, because of such a new staff, is just going back to our roots. We're not in here trying to change education, change everything that we've done in the past. It's just go back to what we were good at. And we know that COVID derailed lots of different things, but we know that's no longer an excuse. So what do? Goes back to our accountability. So we're really focusing on academics and behavior and communication procedures and policies. We're really looking in that proactive, restorative, school-wide processes. So one of the new additions this year that has come and gone over the last couple of years, we have a full-time counselor. So really adding that restorative piece when it comes to behavior. And our counselor, Ms. Terry Turner, she's a licensed mental health counselor. So adding in that new domain there, that strength there, because we know mental health is big and our kids are going through a lot of trauma, and so are our staff and our families too. So she's played an instrumental role in that restorative piece. Also, going back to teamwork, right? So encouraging with all the new teachers, they have lots of ideas, they're new, they have lots of questions. So going back to our grade level PLCs is a term you'll see at other schools, we just call them grade level team meetings. Upper lower elementary team meetings, K through 2, 3 through 5. Administration going to those meetings too, so we're trying to practice what we preach, so we know we want to see rotational model of learning, and one size doesn't fit all. The same holds true with our staff too, so what we talk about in 3 through 5 might not be applicable to K through 2, so administration is now going to these individual department meetings, team meetings and stuff, so we can meet the staff where they are and what their unique needs are, and we can address those that way. With the system, the title of the slide is All System Check. So the school's theme this year is Prepare to Launch, as we prepare to launch for 25th Street. And our sub-theme at the elementary is, well, in order to be able to launch, whether a rocket or a jet, we have to make sure all of our systems are in check. So again, not really adding new system, it's just checking them, reviewing them, making tweaks here and there to better serve our kids, better meet the needs of our staff, and stuff like that. So our theme this year at the elementary is All Systems Check. Leader in Me. So Leader in Me is our leadership curriculum that we use that follows the work of Dr. Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I say every year, but last year was the first year we did it. We give the Leader in Me MRA survey. So MRA is Measurable Results Assessment. And last year we gave it to staff, and then we gave it to staff this year. And we know that there's going to be data changes because of such a high new staff population this year. And so it just gives us some tools of what we're working on. So some of the highlights between the fall data last year and this year is overall amongst the staff, our collective efficacy percentage went up 13 percentage points, right? So our school goals went up 17%. So our staff knew what we were working towards, what we were trying to accomplish. They saw themselves as part of the solution as we work towards these goals. Also school climate, right? That's a big thing. When we get some new staff in there, we know that the climate and culture is going to change. But overall, between last year and this year, our school climate has increased 18 percentage points. As we look at our measurable results assessment, we honed in on a few focus areas for this school year. So our 3 focus areas are personal effectiveness, cadet empowerment, and instructional efficacy. And as we look through those, we're really trying to empower our teachers to take on leadership roles. They can't all just come from me or Captain Hornock or Director of Academics. We need everybody on the same page and working towards these goals. So how we're going to work towards these focus areas, we are bringing back our Leader in Me action teams. These were around 5 or 6 years ago, and then of course we'll derail for the pandemic. So these are in progress. So we have identified 3 staff members to lead these 3 they call them subdomains. So we have leadership, culture, and academics. So we've identified 3 of our staff who have leadership capabilities that want to take on more of those roles, leading these things. They're in training. So we had a training last month, and we train again next month. And then these action teams are going to launch in January, and these are all staff-led. So when we look under leadership, some of we call them the big rocks that we're working on. We're working on our 7 habits and how are we teaching those to our kids, right? Begin with the end in mind, seek first to understand before being understood, being proactive, synergize, or sharpen the saw. New and ongoing staff learning. This is just natural because we should always be learning, because we're students too, but especially this year when we have 10, 14 new staff members in the building, there's a lot of information to cover and not enough time. So all of that learning has to continue and be ongoing. Also family and community partnerships. So we have a lot of new staff. They need to be connected to our families as well. How do we get the families involved in the Leader in Me curriculum and seeing themselves as part of that as well? Within our culture team, really working on cadet empowerment. So how are we working on that? Getting the cadets' input. How do you want our physical environment to change? What do you want to see at our school? Leadership roles. How do we get cadets involved in some of the day-to-day work at APA? Door greeters, getting them involved. The lunch lines, bathroom monitors, classroom jobs, helping with announcements. How do we get the cadets to take that leadership role as well? Student voice, again, going back to all of those, how do we serve those kids, so what do we need? Like, this is why we do what we do. If you're not here, we don't have jobs either, so it's like, what is your voice? Your voice is just as important at the table as all of ours. And also the social emotional environment, again, going back to that mental health piece. We know that our kids are coming from a lot of trauma, and how do we best support that at the school? With our academics, the instructional efficacy, so aligning our academics to our school goals. How are we tracking and doing school-wide scoreboards and data? So how are we collecting data and actually using the data to drive our instruction? You'll see more about that in the next slide as well. Also, bringing a focus into our literacy and math nights. Again, this is a nice family activity too. So again, we are all part of the students' learning, not just the teachers, not just the instructional aides, everyone plays a role in it. So the academics team is really focusing on that literacy and math nights for this school year. And these are all staff-led. This is not me leading each one of those things. So we've identified a staff leader, and I meet with them and get updates and stuff. And then the other staff who are not the staff leaders join these committees, and they all work together and bring students to the table. So that's a really cool thing to see the staff leadership and cadets get involved in that. And again, a slow process. Nothing happens overnight here. We want to get this right, so we're taking the time to do all the training with the Leader in Me company, with Sarah Funk, and we're going to launch this in January. So I'll give updates when I come back in the spring. So with our academics, so this year we brought back split level classes. So to recap from last year, we adopted the state's Amplify curriculum, and we tried to do it the best of our ability with Fidelity. And one of those Fidelity approaches with Amplify is whole group instruction. Well, it was difficult to do some whole group instruction if you had different grade levels in each classroom. But we have since learned parts of Amplify that work with our populations, that work with our teachers, and parts that don't work with our populations and teachers. And again, trying not to do this one size fits all. This whole curriculum is not going to serve every single cadet and every single class. So we've taken parts of it that we've liked, and then we are replacing some parts that we don't like with what we know works best for our kids. So split levels was one of those things that came back, and some of the reasons we went back to it, it lowered our classroom sizes. So we had classrooms last year, 26, 25 kids. This year you're seeing classrooms back down to that 20 to 22 mark, and that makes a big difference. It also allows us more opportunities to split some of our strong personalities with our cadets. So some cadets have some personality conflicts and they cannot be in the same classrooms together. Doing split classes, like this year we have 5 different classrooms of 4th graders. So we have multiple different options to split up our 4th grade cadets. It also supports that individualized education, right? So if you look at a 1-2 split class, if you have a 1st grader who's accelerating in math, since they have some 2nd graders in the class, they could join the 2nd grade math groups. If you have a 2nd grader who maybe is a little bit behind with reading, we can go back down to the 1st grade group and help bridge those divides. So it helps with that individualized education. And that's where like the Amplify comes into, and we replace, like we thought Amplify wasn't the best with phonemic awareness, so we brought in Hegarty to help emphasize those skills as well. If we look at our iRead pass rates from last year, after we do the spring test and the summer test, our pass rate was 74%. And our goal this year is 80%. And a highlight is so 2 years ago, we had 7 2nd graders pass iRead 2, and this past year, we had 9 2nd graders pass iRead 2. So again, always working towards the iRead proficiency. iLearn, we know we have some growth to do with the iLearn. Most schools have lots of work to do with our iLearn. So what we have done to help start that process of identifying our best approach to iLearn is the state came out with a checkpoint pilot, and we opted into that pilot. So basically, our cadets have 3 checkpoints throughout the year that cover certain standards, and the big iLearn is going to cover in March or April, one of those 2 months. And what happens is, so we're about to take one on October 29th, so it focuses on certain skills, and the state will score it and give us feedback there. So now we can tailor our instructions, like, okay, this group of cadets did good in this math standard, this group did not. Now we have this data that we could use to drive our instruction. So we've opted into the iLearn checkpoints to get more real-time data instead of waiting until April until the scores come out and then readjusting. We want to be able to adjust quicker. Other thing we have done with one of our academic interventionists, Miss Nancy Wood, she really focuses mostly on the IRE, but this year we asked her to take on a few iLearn groups with our 4th and 5th grade cadets. Some of the most at-risk needs that more intensive academic interventions, and we now have 2 or 3 groups dedicated solely to iLearn. Some of the fun things that we've done just this year, so our walkathon, we hosted a walkathon fundraiser, and we raised over $5,000 just through donations, family donations, right? So we saw a need. We know that transportation costs have increased everywhere, and we want to take our kids on field trips because we want them to experience and have those experiences outside of Anderson and see all those cool things, but it costs money to run those buses. And we want to help cover some of those costs, so walkathon, some of that $5,100 will cover the transportation costs for field trips. And we also have a school-wide positive behavior system in place where we call it the core cash, where they earn essentially like fake money for doing the right things, doing behavior in classrooms and helping out. And they can exchange that monopoly money per se for different prices, but it takes money to fund those prices. So this money will also be used to keep those stores stocked up with all the fun stuff. And that's a picture. The walkathon happened a couple weeks ago on a Friday, but it was rainy and really windy. Which whenever the Hurricane Helene was coming through town, so we had to move inside. But we still had lots of fun with bubbles and stuff in the gym, and that's one of our kindergarten classes participating. So fun stuff there. This year we're also doing a Cadet of the Month. So I really was wanting to recognize students for going above and beyond academically, socially, and doing the right thing. So this award goes back to the roots of APA, back when the founding, and it really started off as an award that's given on Awards Day in May, and it's one time. And we kept saying, like, this award goes back to the roots of APA, so I'm like, we should talk about it more than just one day a year. This is what it means to APA, this is what we want all cadets to be. So now we're doing it monthly. So cadet stands for C for character, A for they're a role model, D they're dependable, E they show excellence in their work, and T, they treat others with respect. And this is all teacher selected. So we have 15 classroom teachers and 5 specials teachers. They each nominate a cadet and write a little blurb about why they meet the acronym of cadet. And then we recognize them one of the Friday assemblies that we do and print them a little certificate, take their picture. And this has been a fun way to get cadet buy-in. And other cadets see these cadets getting these awards once a month, and we also do 2 cadets every week. So it's, again, instilling those core values that this is our end game, right? Like, we can teach math all day and teach kids how to read. Those are very important skills too, but at the end of the day, these teach kids how to be a good human, and that's ultimately what we're working towards. And then finally, before any questions, this is just some of our calendar of events coming up the remainder of this semester. So this Friday we are in Hispanic Heritage Month, so we are bringing several cadets over from the high school over with Miss Wendy South, and they're going to do some traditional dances and talk with our cadets. Last year we did it K through 5. This year we're splitting it up K2 and 3-5 because they're going to do some more intentional education work with our upper elementary cadets. After fall break, we have our annual trunk or treat event, a great community event. At the end of the month, we have family conferences, so those signups went out yesterday, and we've had over 115 families already sign up for a conference. So I think last year was the first year that I've seen family conferences done in my time here, so we're really excited to beat whatever number we had last year and get more families in our building. Friday, November 8th, our Veterans Day convocation. November 15th, so we have our music teacher, Ms. Ham, last year retired, so Ms. Michaela Main, one of our classroom teachers, moved into that position, and she wants to do more music and art shows. So one of our new ones is November 15th. It's called a gratitude gathering. It's for upper elementary cadets to get more families in, showcase our fine arts department. So really excited about that. December 6th is our annual holiday show, and then we're bringing back our holiday shop and our literacy night that ties into the holiday shop as well, and that rounds out our fall semester with some big events.
I feel like you missed the opportunity to plug candy donations.
I did, absolutely I did.
You're welcome.
So, yes, any candy donations for trunk or treat, so teachers will bring their own, but the trunk or treat over the years has morphed outside of APA a lot, so lot of our cadets bring their neighborhood friends, or they bring their younger siblings or kids from other schools, and it's a great way to bring new families into our building, show that we are attempting to be a community school and stuff along those lines. But we need more candy to
I'll
give
bet
to
our
all of those
local
cadets.
dentist would be glad to.
Absolutely,
Perhaps, yes.
absolutely. So,
That's the best way to get that candy.
yeah.
Where do you want them
Yes.
to donate the candy or drop it off?
They can drop it off at the elementary, anywhere at the elementary. Reach out to me. Go from there.
Miss
So,
Tiffany, we'll hide it from the staff.
yes. I got hiding
That's
staff.
always,
I
like, the
have
problem,
several
right? We
stashes
gotta
around the
lock stuff
elementary
up.
and things like that. So, any questions? Comments?
Just a real quick, I heard you say you had 10 new staff members. Approximately how many would that be in total that churned? Like what percentage? 20%, 30%?
The subject is, I think that works best with the key areas that they have to get to be a foundation for everything else. I mean, if you can't read, I mean, the rest of it is immaterial because you can't function.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I can see how one would draw the conclusion that we have something resembling anarchy perhaps, and too
Sure.
much, everything's too loose, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lots of-
and
Um,
I would say, I will say, the science of reading, the research behind it is very solid. And it really truly comes out from 2000s, and then we spent 20 years going from whole language to, using phonics, and then go back and forth and back and forth. And we know that reading is an integrated content, right?
Mhm.
To actually teach it, you have to be able to sound out unfamiliar words. You
It helps,
also have
yeah.
to have sight word recognition. And so looking at Amplify, we've not thrown out like Amplify, like, okay,
Well,
we're
you
just
gotta have it
rebelling.
all,
Right.
yeah.
But we saw areas that we weren't seeing the results we should have been because our kids had such deficiencies in that, which
Mhm.
also goes to lack of early childhood education
Yeah.
and that part. And so bringing in and supplementing those parts, but also pulling out and doing it the way that is working best for the kids in front of us. I spent part of last year observing, because we're like, well, how do I do this? Because I've got such diverse learners, even if we were all third grade. But Amplify says I have to teach this stuff. When do I get to this part? And so we really had to analyze the data that we have from our M-Class stuff, from our NWEA, from IXL, all of those points, and say, where's our root cause here? What is this deficiency? And that's bringing in the Haggerty, especially at that earlier level, will fill that in. We saw very quick results with that programming as a supplement to the Amplify. Amplify, especially as we have younger teachers, newer to the profession, or old dogs learning new tricks. Amplify does have a fairly scripted program, so it gives them a really solid foundation to build off of. However, we also know we got to do it in small groups, whether we have second and third grade and their chronological age in one room, or we have full chronological third graders. So we're just working with all the stuff that we learned during the lit cadre and what they are, because all the teachers have to start being trained in science of reading. Stoddy already is. Good job. And so as they're learning new approaches, as we're still using Orton Gillingham with Nancy Wood and Becky Simmet, it's really kind of taking a comprehensive look at it. So we'll say we didn't totally throw it out.
Well, a lot of these programs, you got either a business person or you got a scientist or something that has never been in the trenches, let's say, to start with designing something that may work if you're in, I don't know, Carmel or somewhere. But again, we're here. And so I don't know. I don't think there's any right or wrong, but it's hard to judge this system versus that. I guess the smart teacher basically analyzes, well, this is a class, this is the team I've got in front of me now, and to meet our objectives, you may have to do this or do that a little different.
That's exactly right.
So,
And it changes
yeah.
class by class. So it's
Okay.
like, what are the
So
needs of my
that's
current
good.
kids in front of me?
And my last question, and we may not be looking that far ahead, what do you envision when we have 25th Street back in, let's say, working order again. It's been a while since that building's been
I haven't
used.
been in that building for a while, so.
I went to school there. I
Yeah.
went to grades 1 through 6 there,
Yeah.
so it did look a lot smaller.
No,
Or no, it looked a lot bigger then. Now it looks smaller, but yeah.
Like, it's all like dreamed about, like, there is a lack.
Are you gonna move like K through 2 again, or?
Those decisions haven't been
Yeah.
Yeah.
thought about.
I was just
Yeah.
wondering if you had any idea how that, because you're at full capacity, more or less.
There's
in-
still room.
Well, there's always broom closet. You put some
my,
in broom
my
closet.
office is in the
I
closet.
said, we have
so
really
I'm
run out of
okay.
physical room. We even got them like a
So-
shed out back for storage and it's full.
That's one of our
Yeah.
recruiting for new faculty. Yeah, we,
Yeah, we'll
I'm
get you a
really
shed.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Like if there's a daycare, right? So we
Yeah.
had 4 staff
I-
members this
I-
past year had babies. So
Mhm.
I wonder if we would be able to retain them. I don't know if daycare is going to be free or going to be a reduced cost to those families, but we could
Mhm.
retain
Yeah.
teachers because we know with our clientele, they need that stability. They need to see familiar
well, and
faces
also
and
it's
stuff.
a feeder mechanism
Absolutely.
in a way, just like minor leagues and baseball.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that the board has, board strategy over time has always dealt with. We've started out with a situation where when we implemented let's say 1 through 5, kindergarten was like half a day or half a person or something. But we had a limit that was less than what we could take in 6 through 12. And of course, we had many discussions on the board level with management about the inherent illogic of that, because how are we supposed to feed all of these slots if we got less people down in
Sure.
the minor leagues, let's say? And then one day, I think I did point out, I said, wait a minute, how many people are we allowed to have here? And how many have we got? And it turned out that we hadn't even come close to filling what we were allocated, and it seemed like that issue vanished for some reason. I don't know. Treasurers are expected to be your doom and gloom guys, and they say you're not doing your job, but
I'm really excited. I'm
At
not,
any rate.
I'm not directly involved in that process. That's
ancient
Captain
history.
Brady.
Those
Well,
days
yeah,
are
for them.
gone, yeah.
Even with the new launch pad, I'm not directly involved in that work
Yeah.
as they're working to get that ready. But again, excited for a potential staff daycare. Even the early childhood, we know that there's a lack of that, and we can tell the kids who had preschool and all of that compared to the kids
Yes.
who don't.
Yeah.
And we're trying to even that playing field. So, like you said, a feeder system, we can also start shaping the kids into our academic model, and let's get them ready for kindergarten and keep going from there.
that sounds
Yeah.
good, a lot of potential.
Well, and some of our landscape analysis and research, so based off of 2023 counts, our county had about 7,200 children that would be early childhood age, so ages 0 to 4. And we, in our county, had 10 early childhood centers total for the entire Madison County. There is no way that 10 of those centers can service even 700 kids.
Really?
There were 61 in-home daycare centers, which typically those, based off of the different age ratios, they can probably go up possibly to 16 to 20 max. And then there were 8 ministry-based ones. And that's, again, for the whole county. If we look here in Anderson as a whole, we have 5 of those programs that would be considered the early childhood centers. And 4 of them are special need, special purpose. So ABA-based or Head Start, kids that are already showing some developmental delays. And then there's basically 1 that could accept kids that do not meet those categories, and we have 3,100 preschool, early childhood age kids in the city of Anderson. There's no way to get them into the programming that
There
they
really
need
is
to
a
be.
need then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
And I'm sure we can, I think we can offer as good a service as anyone in that area, I think.
and there are a
Considering
few,
how several that aren't even
Yeah.
able to financially.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we are in, and this is one of those things where I know, and this is not a political statement, but when you hear people say they can't afford to work, they truly cannot afford to work because of the cost of childcare
Yeah.
and the cost of transportation. They are actually losing money
Yep.
to go to work, which is insane. But that's kind of where we're at least in our community.
As a member of my service club, one of our programs of service is the prevention of child abuse through our Family Resource Center locally here and throughout the country. We were informed at today's meeting that in Indiana, Madison County now has the highest reported, or second highest reported incident of child abuse. I think it's Lee County or Gary maybe is still number one, but we have a higher level than even Indianapolis and bigger urban areas. So that is what we're dealing with, and since we're here, you got to deal with it.
Say you talked
And
to
still
them
try to
today.
hold
You talked to them
standards.
yesterday.
True,
Yeah, I
but,
talked to them today.
Yeah, Stotty had a report and talked to a couple today. CJ was with him yesterday.
Mhm.
We're pretty familiar with DCS. And yeah, but the good news is it's being reported.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So a lot of problems.
Well, appreciate your time.
thank you.
Very good
Come back here in
presentation.
March, so-
In March, well, you can come back sooner than that if
Oh,
you
he
want.
will,
but-
I will.
of course. Yeah. All
you
right,
all.
thank you, Stotty. Good work.
Mr. Schoenbaum, thank you, sir, as always. Thank you for all the great work that the elementary team is doing over there. We truly appreciate it.
All right. That's it. I think we're ready and
All right, next on the agenda is we have the Ball State University presentation of the midterm review.
all right.
I think this is the coldest it's been.
You can, wherever you guys want.
Everybody's
Yeah,
complaining
whatever
over
works best.
so many things right now.
We can always move or whatever you want us to
It's
do.
37 degrees in the morning
Get that out of
and
the way
then
there.
we're gonna
Okay,
keep
I might
78.
triple
Oh,
that.
good.
We use yours or mine, I don't care.
While Jamie sets
Glad
up,
you
I
got the weird
really
thing.
want to
Do you need
congratulate Jill on
a
getting
minute
the
to set
CPI
up your
training. That's
equipment?
something
Yes.
easy to do, and it will ultimately
All right,
save
we
the
have our
corporation
expert with
tens
Brian here
of
on
thousands
those sorts of things.
dollars. Because I know as a school principal how much I had to pay to have CPI trainers brought in. And I was even finding local people that would give me a deal and I was still spending thousands of dollars. So what Jill has done not only helps the school and children, but it helps the bottom line too.
Thanks.
It's
I
a great
appreciate
candidate for it too.
It's,
Do you want me to sit up here?
And you're a great candidate for it.
Dang it. I'm really enjoying it. Like,
See you then.
Let's see, everybody's way here. Okay. These got wheels on them, might as well use them. So there we go.
yeah, I actually
can
had
you
to
see
bring
okay?
Richie in. to do this
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, well,
Time it on.
you're gonna get a copy of this if you might already have a copy of it, I don't know.
It's
And,
affordable.
oh, I lost the signal.
Just kidding.
This isn't some kind of dead signal.
Did it wiggle?
True, well, that's true.
Why isn't it?
I might have to steal your computer.
No. Because I think he's elementary principal.
So while we figure this out, so
Building.
if you haven't already received it, it's a lengthy presentation. And we have a lot of ground to cover with the K through 12 school. I will not go through every single bullet point in great detail. I'm gonna hit the big topics, and you all can kind of digest this, as well on your own. And I first want to just acknowledge, we had this awkward timing of we came to do the site visit, we're at the end of the school year. And so we're a little late in getting a presentation to you all to present this formally, but in the interim, we have talked to Jill a couple times now. She's received this feedback already. She's already shared it with her staff. So the feedback has been received. We just had not gotten a chance with scheduling for you all and the change of the school year to formally present it to the board. But the staff has received the feedback already.
So this review was during the 23-24
Yeah.
school year, so we know lots of things have changed.
Yeah.
But, it just encapsulates what we saw.
Yeah, and so as we go through this, again, recognizing this was the end of the school year, And I've already told Jill and the school leadership, please feel free, if there are things that you all wanna chime in on about updates that might reflect something different, please do that. So I first just wanna reiterate, the purpose of a midterm review. The purpose of the midterm review is to give schools actionable feedback before they are up for renewal. So the idea is sort of halfway through the charter contract, we come in, give feedback. We basically run it like a normal renewal visit. So we're meeting with different stakeholders with the school, students, different, school faculty, different groups, parents. We're observing classrooms, we're, walking the buildings, all of that. And so, but the goal is to give constructive feedback. It's not a punitive thing. It's, you can take this feedback and do with it what you want. Very rarely will we say, you need to do X, Y, or Z. We're gonna give at the end of this presentation, there's a series of recommendations. They are not prescriptive. You see, I have that very clearly. They are not prescriptive. Unless for some reason, and we didn't in this case, but there have been times when we saw something at a school, we said, you have to do this or that because there's legal issues or something like that. But really, for the most part, it is just recommendations that you can use, digest, prioritize as you see fit. Because again, you all are looking at the big picture, your budget, your resources, other factors, changes with the school. So they are not prescriptive. I do want to point out also, we did come at the end of the school year, at the end of iLearn testing. You also had your CAP flights going on, so there was some weird stuff going on, as well.
It was not the best timing, but
it wasn't the best timing.
We made it work.
But in a way it was, because I also got to go visit, I got to see the flights go on. So, it's certainly not, like when we get to the stuff about classroom observations, it wasn't a normal time in terms of classroom observations, so we recognize that. But we do find themes, as we visit classrooms, as we talk to folks, we do find consistent themes. So just a little bit of overview, and again, I won't highlight everything here, but we just want to give some overviews about the school. We do want to highlight, obviously, the success that you've had with grant funding. Jill's hustling, getting lots of grants. And so that's a really important piece. You all have talked about the shifting in the student population. You've got this increase in homeless students, increase in EL students, newly enrolled students coming in years behind. So you've seen some shifting in the demographics of your school. I want to make sure I point out to you too that the dress code, the students told us they liked the dress code. So that was a theme that we heard consistently over and over. Yes, so that was very interesting. Sometimes kids, they hate those kind of things, right? But what they told us, right, Dawn? They told us they loved it.
They very much feel like it levels the playing field.
Yeah, they did. They
when you use disparity in economic level, they're aware of that. Even
They
in
are.
third grade, you get it.
Yeah.
And so, and you parents, everybody was like, it's easy, we know what we need to do, we get the clothes out, there's no fights or hassles about wanting to wear something. So, overall, and I have to admit, I was a little surprised, but in every group, there was
in every group.
positivity.
It was a really consistent theme we heard. So we wanted to share that because, you don't always hear that. The building overall, safety features, strong safety features in the school buildings. And so, just sort of overall, very positive. Classroom observations, we'll get into this a little bit more detail when we talk about elementary versus middle and high. But, we didn't see, a whole lot of engagement in the classroom while we were here. Again, we recognize the oddity of the time we were here. But even with that, I always say to schools, sure, it's the end of the year, people are starting to lose steam, right? But we teach until the buzzer, right? And I think that's important for schools to remember. It's hard, I know. I mean, you're at the end of the year, you're done with state testing, you're trying to wrap things up. And so sometimes, we lose that intentionality of trying to keep kids engaged, right? But it is important to try to go to the buzzer. We wanted to
Can I
highlight.
interject for one
sure.
tiny second?
Yeah.
For clarification purposes only,
You're fine.
when they observed the elementary, we were actually in I-learn testing, so we hadn't been done with it yet. But
Yeah, no, it's
that's
fine.
fine. Just that part. It was really hard. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
We tried to get you to the
You're
classrooms.
fine.
I couldn't find any of them.
And marketing, we wanted to highlight that as a really positive feature. You've done some really good jobs, like even with the elementary presentation, just the branding of the language and the consistency of the theme. I think that's important. It reflects the mission of your school. And so we wanted to highlight that too. When we were here, there was 24% of the staff were not licensed or had an expired license that was pending renewal, but we know that's certainly changed as well. This is how you just heard there's been a 50% churn in elementary school, so that's just reflective of the time that we were here. This was something that teachers talked a lot about, the desire for de-escalation training. You just heard Jill say this is her new classroom, so that was something that they talked a lot about with us. Attendance, we wanted to highlight attendance. And this is a recurring problem around the state. This is not unique to APA, but we do have a lot of kids who, coming out of COVID, have just really lost engagement in school. And so we have a major problem in our state with attendance. So right now, 49.3% of APA students are attending school at least 94% of the time. So that's lower than the state average of 61, but it's higher than the district. So, some of that, again, is reflective of community factors, right? What's going on in the community.
No, that means absentee is playing hooky,
Yeah.
not just switching from virtual.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That is, you're not in school. And
I was staggered to see those
Yeah.
numbers. We're supposed to be a school of
Yeah.
excellence,
Yeah.
even though we do work with everybody, but that's not good. Do you think those numbers held true before COVID, though, I wonder?
so it's definitely, for everybody, it's gone down.
statewide.
So one of the things that the reason I included this slide, and I'm gonna walk through it, is because Dawn and I were in a school last week, and a school leader gave a presentation that included attendance data. And I walked out of there and I said to Dawn, I called her, we were on the highway, and I'm like, I don't think she understood that attendance data. So we went back and were Googling, looking up at their data, and she didn't. And part of the reason is because the state is very confusing right now about how they're reporting attendance.
Yeah.
So I thought I would include this slide because I wanted to make sure that you as the board all knew what the state is actually looking at in terms of attendance. And they look at it a couple different ways. So this right here is the percentage of students attending at least 94% of the time, which is the data point I had on the previous slide. So this is where you were in 23. And so you can see pre-COVID it was better. This is a weird thing that has to do with the state's reporting. It's not the school's fault. There was some sort of data error. Everyone has it. I don't know what it is.
Data exchange rollout, just
Yeah.
saying.
So this is, if you look at the Indiana dashboard, this is what they have on there. 94% of the time is the benchmark that we're looking to see. Did kids attend school 94% of the time? That is not the data point that any school's held accountable for in Indiana yet, okay? So why they have it there, I don't know, but maybe they're going that direction.
Well,
But above, go
I
ahead.
would say historically, that was an accountability point. If you
It
didn't
is,
have
but
it,
it's actually, this is.
yeah,
the,
now it's gone down there.
Yeah.
And for the board, for context, the legislators are working to change this attendance thing. They did a summer study session. We'll see some more
Yeah.
legislation this spring. And whatever they're doing made the Madison County Prosecutor's Office call us and say, hey, we need 3 years of your attendance data real quick to go through this. And then in the same breath said, don't progress until they've had 30 unexcused absences.
Yeah.
Well, okay then,
Yeah.
nice talk, enjoy your data.
Yeah.
So
It's either that or
So
hire
there-
a lot more attorneys to follow up then.
that's what the world needs, more attorneys.
Because we used to look at,
So this is on portable, right?
you know, we used to look
I
at
sent
like
it.
chronic
Brian can't see
absenteeism,
it. I
for
sent a
example.
picture of
So
it to
here you
him,
can
but
see
I just told him
for,
it
and
wasn't
this is the
portable.
data for APA. Last year, 30% of students were considered chronically absent, meaning they missed 10% of school. 18 days.
Let me
So
make
one
sure.
in three,
Oh.
I mean, that's.
Yes, it's a lot of school. And it's 10% of time for
Yeah, I
any
just- I sent
reason,
it.
whether it be excused or unexcused. It doesn't matter if you have an excused absence, you're still missing learning time, right? So anyways, chronic absenteeism, the state legislature decided maybe about a year ago, they actually removed the language from Indiana code about chronic absenteeism. Then they said, we're not gonna track that. Then they looked at the data and said, you know, hey, this is a really big problem. So they're very confused about what they're doing. But up here, these three, that is what you're held accountable for on federal accountability. So that is right now the attendance measure that you're held accountable for. And so a model attendee is a student who attends 96% of the time. Now remember, our state is reporting 94% of the time in another place, but federal accountability is 96% of the time, or you've improved attendance by at least 3%. So that's your improved kiddos. So 31% of your kids improved their attendance. So that's a positive thing, you know, when our kids who aren't doing well attendance-wise are, you know, you're driving that number up and improving attendance. So I just want to kind of share that with you to show you, you know, the different language that's being used. But right now, these top three are what you are held accountable for on federal accountability. What happens with the state, I don't know, but that is what the state has for its federal accountability report card. And so you can see, again, with the chronic absenteeism, there's the state average, 17.8% of kids were chronically absent across the state of Indiana last year. You had 30%, so you were above the state average. You're below ACS. ACS, 36% of the kids were chronically absent. So there certainly is some community factors here, right, happening. So I just wanted to share that, so you all as board members, because like I said, Dawn and I left that other meeting, we were like, there's confusion about this, like,
Yeah.
what this
Is it one age, is it just across the board at all ages, or
So-
is it like very young kids, very?
We don't know that, but one of the things that we're gonna, at the end, you're gonna see some recommendations, and I'm gonna get to that, because
Okay.
I think that that's important analysis to be done,
Sure.
because generally research shows high absenteeism in lower grades. Parents think that, oh, well, it's easy. It's just the alphabet, they can catch up, you know? But it's actually very detrimental for children to miss so much school early on. It piles on, and there's a lot of research about the likelihood of a kindergartner who's chronically absent, the lower likelihood they'll graduate from high school. So there's a lot of data around it, but it is a lot of times this younger kids, because parents just don't put a lot of value on it. So then I'm not gonna belabor this, but I do wanna just kind of put this out here. I know, you know, you all get school leader reports, you see the data, you just saw the elementary, you know, I learned data. So you've seen this, but I think we just wanna sort of engage in a discussion here, start a discussion about, you know, really challenging and trying to get us to think about how do we improve some of these things. And we're gonna get to this.
These numbers terrible for us in most categories? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixed bag, you know, you can see I read,
Yeah, what is
you know.
district, out of curiosity?
So that's ACS.
Oh,
So I
okay.
should have put ACS, but I just
Okay,
put
so
the
that's,
district.
Anderson.
So that's your local
Okay.
district. So you can see in some cases you're, you know, in iRead, you're doing better than the district. In math, you're certainly struggling in comparison, you know, to the district. In English language arts, a little bit of a mixed bag here. Graduation rate, you know, you're pretty close here to the district average. And then the college going rate is lower than the district. Now, that's students going to a 2-year or 4-year, you know, college. So it is a little bit of a mixed bag, and I think that, certainly you're hearing, you've already heard, even at the elementary here, you've heard some presentation tonight, I know you have heard from Jill, some of the different things you guys are doing in terms of curriculum, engagement, you mentioned the project-based learning,
Yeah.
which I think would have a big impact on this math piece with the STEM focus. And so, I think it does need to get better, right? It does. And we could say that for every, the state
Yeah.
data isn't so bad either, right? But coming out of COVID, we are past the point of, you said that earlier, we're past the point of using COVID as an excuse. Kids are severely behind. We know that. I read an article recently about middle school. They looked at NWA data and said that middle school students, to catch up because of COVID, they would need 6 months more of school. So figure that out. Like, how do we extend the school year for middle school? Like, for them to catch up, they would need more time.
Right, and
It's
we're
very
already in
interesting.
school for about 10 months, so add
Yeah.
6 months to that, and
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I will say, one of the issues that we have with the graduation rate that we are still having, we cannot get people off our cohort that shouldn't be there. And this has been a fight with the state for about 11 years, where kids have enrolled or they started to enroll and then they withdrew and they were only with us for maybe a week and then they disappeared and we have no clue what happened to them. And then we're still being held accountable, and we've gone through the grad audit rate process, all those things. And we're like, no, they didn't attend here. So we've had to work on kind of how our enrollment process goes and how all those coding things go, and then fix a lot of issues within our student information system.
Isn't that 27% graduates going to college a little low? I mean, most of the commencements, and every kid, we have a few goes to the military, but every kid says, well, I'm going to this college or that trade school or something.
That's what, if I can chime in, that's what I was gonna ask too, is does that data show anything about trade schools? Cause there's a big push now. For a lot of folks in the focal point about trade schools, it seemed like it didn't show that in there.
No, it would cover whatever the State Higher Ed Commission collects if you've enrolled in a 2-year or 4-year. So it's gonna pick up Ivy Tech, but it's, so it will pick up Ivy Tech, but it won't pick up, if you're going to a trades program outside of, like a vocational program that's outside of Ivy Tech, it's not gonna pick that up, but Ivy Tech would be included in that.
Since you got this, Higher Ed Commission is usually a couple years behind. Do you know which
I'd
graduating
have
classes?
to look, I could probably look for it.
Okay.
I don't remember, maybe that's.
3 or 4 now.
Yeah, it is a few years behind, their cohort data is always a few years behind, but this is the college going rate, not the completion rate, so this should be, it's probably a year behind, but I can look and tell you, it can't.
We did see it decrease with the class of 2020 and the class of 2021.
Yeah.
Where, especially because they were gonna have to do school online, where they're like, oh, well, I'll just take a gap year. Well, the gap year turned into gap years.
Yeah.
And so that's
But you also see a rise in
the trades
but also what local employers were paying per hour, because there was such a demand for immediate employment. You had places like Walmart, Meijer, local food places that were starting individuals out between $15 to $18 per hour. And this became an income for the home. So we had a large group of our students that entered the workforce immediately, and that is a struggle that we continue to have, specifically with our high number of early grads, as we are trying to promote our early grads to go to college or use that avenue to go to college or to a trade school or to a post-secondary program. What we are seeing people pursue early graduation so that they can enter the workforce, and they hope to receive that training at at that place of employment. And I'm talking about places like Nestle, Tiffany Group, Interstate Warehousing. All of the local employers around here Same thing with Carter Express. We have some people that have started employment at Carter Express. They've since received their CDL. They're waiting until they turn 21 to be placed on the road. So they have had the post-secondary training. It is just not being reflected as far as traditional routes.
Yeah, and we've seen kids that are walking away from full rides. We've seen them walk away from their 21st century scholars,
Yes. and that is a struggle as well. We have lots of monies that have been left on the table by our students. Just because of the access to careers or jobs right now that can provide some socioeconomic relief to the families.
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors to that. I just had a conversation yesterday with a child that was wanting to look at alternative education because he knew in the state of Indiana, once he turns 17, that individual can turn 17 next week, that they can now be accepted into an adult education program. And that's why it's the idea of earning an income to support the family. So what we do. Yeah.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we would really encourage any school to do is to look at growth. You know, the pass rate is not going to match the state average next year. You know, no matter what you do, it would be very hard to do. Not impossible, but very, very challenging. But to make sure your growth, that students are growing a year's worth of growth, you know, because they really need to grow that plus more to close their gap. So when you look at the growth data, you know, that's what we would encourage you probably to keep your eye on the prize too about growth, is because those gaps have to close.
Yeah. And growth is measured based, so that data point is the percentage of students who met their growth targets. So in the case of math proficiency, or math growth, 6.7% of 4th through 8th graders met their growth targets. That's just not, that's unacceptable, you know? And so, you know, and that's based on the kid took the test the previous year, and the growth target is based on what would you need to do in order to become proficient within, I think it's like a 2-year period or something. And so, you know, that's just unacceptably low. And so I don't want to belabor this and hammer you on it, but I want you to keep this data in the back of your mind as you're thinking about, talking about your strategies, as, you know, as we talk through, you know, some of what we're going to discuss, because that's, like Dawn said, that's the eye on the prize. We just want to really encourage you to be laser focused on some of those data points of driving growth. And, you know, part of this is, and so keep this in your mind as we talk about some of these slides, because, for example, in the elementary, we always ask kids this rigor question. You know, do you feel like you're learning something new, you know, every day in school? Now, again, we were here, you know, weird time. I get it, Jill. But, you know, they don't feel like they're learning something new every day. And now, you know, certainly you have a total shift in staff at that building. I understand that. But it's important to think about that. You know, how do we, you know, get more rigor, you know, get more engagement with kids, higher level questioning, you know, because that all goes back to those earlier data points of proficiency and growth. So we really want to encourage you to think about those issues. The kids, again, part of this is about, we're giving you the feedback that different stakeholders have shared with us.
That's what
And so that's what students said to us. That's not our assessment.
Of course, any kid anywhere, kids are gonna be kids. Every kid's gonna say, oh, be whining, it's boring.
You know,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you what.
Well,
If they
if
are
it's so
stacked that
boring,
group.
then why don't you guys work on getting those test scores up?
I will say, just for
That's
context, can
sympathetic.
you tell them like how many student focus groups you guys did, and just so they know kind of like
So
that
we
sample
actually met
part.
with like particularly with the elementary, we met with a large number of elementary students. In fact, that was, I mean, I don't know, it was like 20 maybe, like it was a big group, and it's generally grades 3 or 4, I think a 3
Do you remember, Sonny, if we did 3 through 5 or 4 through 5?
Yeah. I mean, it was a big group. That was actually one of the largest focus groups of kids, that we had. And so, so that was something that they shared. But they also shared, they also shared a lot about, that they, especially kids that had attended other schools, they felt like APA treated students better here. They had very positive things to say about the climate of the school. The high ability instruction they highlighted. It's really interesting. I mean, kids will tell you a lot. Like, it's really fascinating to sit down with them and their observations, but they shared that as a strength that they thought was important. They felt that student behavior was impacting their own education. So when another student misbehaves, they felt like, they wanted that addressed so that it didn't disrupt their learning.
They used to call them knuckleheads.
Yeah. It's a very common theme. Dawn and I do a lot of these focus groups, and it's a very common theme that we hear amongst kids. Like, the behavior of other people is affecting, my learning. But overall, I mean, they felt very supported and safe here. They have a very positive feeling about APA, and I think just looking at some things around rigor and trying to challenge them more, and you can always say, hey, you told the Ball State people that's what you guys wanted, so. The middle school students, middle and high, same thing, positive feelings about the culture of the school, the climate. They felt very supported by the school leadership. They felt like their concerns were valued and would be addressed. That was a point of emphasis for them. They also talked about, the rigor, lacking rigor, and they want to be challenged more. So again, you can always say, you tell the Ball State people you want to be challenged more. So that was something that they shared. At the middle and high, kids the groups we talked to, they did not have an understanding of their NWA growth targets. They didn't really know what that meant. So maybe talking to kids a little bit more about, their own progress and how to measure progress. They had some thoughts about variety of classes, and you all can read, their suggestions here. I do want to emphasize that I've been at Ball State for 10 years, and there's never been a high school group that I have met with that hasn't said, we want to learn more about life skills. And your kids said it too. It's consistent. I hear it every time. They want to know about finances. They want to know about mortgages, credit cards. They really do. So that is something that came up again, and it's come up every time we talk to high schoolers. My point here, they feel like they are not being prepared for the future after they leave high school. That was explicitly said to us. They felt very fearful that they didn't know about the big world, and all of that, and taxes.
I could do algebra too,
but I can't adult.
How to lease an apartment.
Right.
Those kind of things. And it, like I said, it's common everywhere we go, but any opportunity, back in the day we would say, well, the parents did that, right? But
we just had that conversation yesterday with a student. They were worried about how to establish credit because they were trying to identify a way to be able to get their own cell phone, so that they could develop credit, so that they could. They are working 30 hours a week. They have enough cash to put a down payment on a car, but they do not have an established credit score to be able to make the application. So, we've connected with both our personal finance class last year was the first year we offered it. That is now something that we are placing our upperclassmen in. So the individual that teaches that had transitioned to teaching was a licensed CPA. So there is the talk about I-9s, W-2s, W-9s, and all the different forms and how to set up. So it's been an interesting growth as far as conversations. The group that we took out to the IUOE earlier this year, what made it interesting, they had a 45-minute conversation on pensions. And so that was an interesting presentation that we had upperclassmen, so juniors and seniors that participated in that were actually asking about pensions and how pensions work and how how unions work. And so it was a very interesting conversation, because there is that need to have some sort of financial security, because there's they're not getting those conversations at home. It's more of what they're learning on social media about different ads that they see from investment platforms and this, so they have a knowledge that this stuff exists. They just don't know how to operate.
And they're up against some barriers. As soon as if they go to a college campus, if they go on campus, like I went to IU, and the credit card companies were out there on day one. Like when all the kids came to campus, they were out there. You went
Like, here you go, here you go, here you go.
I mean, I remember that they gave me like a $14,000 credit limit as a freshman in college. Like, it's
Makes
completely
sense.
ridiculous, right? I had no income. Why are you giving me this?
By that kind of knowledge, you save a kid from dropping out, who
Yeah.
got in debt, made an 18-year-old mistake, and now has to do
Right.
work to pay that off. So I think they recognize that
They
there
do.
are lots of things coming their way. So
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
we can do that and infuse it just in any type of classroom. It doesn't have to just be a financial class.
Well,
Agree, because it can be really engaging and interesting.
And I will say, we added at the middle school level with those exploratory classes we started about 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
There is an adulting 101. That's one of the classes, right? Like whatever. But that's changing a tire and dishes and stuff, like all that stuff. And then also throughout Civil Air Patrol as part of their curriculum as they're growing that program, they're infusing some of that life skill stuff or things that we would have gotten from FACS or home ec or whatever, right? And it is interesting because I'm like, can you guys teach me that real quick?
I know, right?
Okay, I need
I know.
extra help on that, but
I was just gonna say when you said adulting, I was like, some of us adults need adulting 101 too.
Yeah.
I always relied on my father to do my handyman stuff, and he's 75 now, and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm like, okay, well, what am I gonna do? He's like, pay somebody, Jamie. Like,
It really is
Well,
amazing how many parents don't educate their children. Last year, I came across an 18 to 19-year-old, both of them. Their parents have never told them if there was an electric bill.
yeah.
So
Well-
here they're expecting that they can move out of their parents' house.
not knowing
They
all
don't
the
realize that
Right,
you
all
do
those
have to
other
pay for your
things.
electric bill and all that.
Agreed.
and we're running into that, I would say, with our young teachers and our young staff members, especially in that 19 to 26 age group. Especially when they turn 26 and you're like, wait, health insurance? What is that? Costs how much?
Yeah.
What? Wait, what? Like, okay, we're gonna go through your paycheck real quick. Not advising because I'm not a financial advisor, but I had a young staff member in my office last week where we were talking about student loan repayment and how you set that up and how you do your things, and really, they're 26.
Yeah.
So if we can crack that code, successful
They want
professionals.
it. I mean, they want it, so
Yeah.
I think it is important. And so then we get to actually, our visit to the classrooms, again, with the disclaimer of the weird time. But, when we were in the classrooms, just a couple things, we didn't see a lot of direct instruction during the time we were there. There was a lot of work on laptops, a lot of kids kind of doing independent work. We would talk to kids, we'd say, how do you know what you need to work on? And they just, they'd say, well, I'm just picking. So there wasn't, and that concerned us, because if a kid is saying, I'm just picking what I need to do on IXL, instead of a teacher telling them, this is what's appropriate for you, this is where you're at right now. You just can't willy-nilly just be picking stuff, right?
That's what I was trying to angle towards, because I had read that before,
Yeah.
with that rotational learning versus the traditional instruction, because you will tend to have more of that in
Yes,
rotational.
you do, and it just needs
But it
to be
doesn't-
intentional
not necessarily
and
bad.
poignant. It's not necessarily bad, it's just, like we said, we
wasn't
saw,
too
we
much.
would ask kids and they didn't really have they were just not really clear on what they were supposed to do. And they were picking things as opposed to the teacher telling them. We saw a lot of teachers that were behind their desk at the time of the elementary, and again, we know that 50% of that staff has changed, right? So I get that. But at the time, we just didn't see a lot of teachers being engaged in classrooms. We did see more paras, being engaged with kids. I asked some kids about, Leader in Me as we were in the classrooms. We saw some evidence of Leader in Me, and I know that was fairly new, and you just heard in the earlier presentation, that's something, that sort of is recommitting, you guys are recommitting to. And so we saw, and I wasn't surprised, because I already knew that it was, you kind of had gotten off with the track with COVID, so kids kind of knew, but not, not a whole lot. The neuroscience class was really interesting. That was such a strong piece of the school. That was interesting to watch kids learn techniques, how to cope with their own, stress and emotion. So we thought that was really a highlight as well of the elementary school.
How lovely that that's offered
Yes.
to them. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't see that at other places.
Yeah.
It's a very innovative,
It is.
creative way to help children develop those softer skills that you need to learn, right? If you have home on your mind, you're not at school,
Yeah.
other than sitting in a seat. So we very rarely mention specific classes because
Yeah.
we don't want certain teachers, to feel like
Called
we
out.
singled it out. But that's such a unique class. We thought that was definitely worth highlighting
Yeah.
and saying how wonderful that is.
And something that's building culture in the school building. It's giving teachers tools to use, techniques to use in their own classrooms then as well. So we just thought that was really something that's positive and you guys can build on and, really run with that. I think the biggest theme with the elementary was just more rigor and engagement, and I know you all know that. The classroom observations for the middle and high, again, we didn't see a lot of student engagement. We saw some project work, kind of catch up project work going on, again, on the timing, but still, we just want to challenge you to keep thinking about that, how do you?
Energy didn't.
Yeah,
ring.
yeah, so, really thinking about how to keep kids engaged, and I know it's a struggle, and we thought that, the military emphasis was very evident to us, with the way kids they stood when we came in the classroom, just the sort of the routines that was evident, structure was obvious. I got to go over to the airfield and see the flights, and that was really cool to see. And we talked to kids too about it, when I was there, and we talked to them also in the student focus groups. And most of the kids had no interest in becoming a pilot, but they still wanted to do it because it's challenging yourself to do something really brave, right? And it was very cool, and parents were very positive too about it as well. So that was very cool to see, and I feel like there's so much you can do with that. One thing I do want to share with you guys, in the back of the presentation, I have a couple resources, and you all may have been aware of it. I was not, but Vincennes University has an aviation service program, and they work with high schools to develop, help kids get certifications to be airplane mechanics, etc. So good paying jobs, right? Anyways, I share this because I happen to be having a conversation with somebody from Vincennes recently who told me that particular program just got a sizable grant, and they are looking for new schools to work with. So that might be really something to leverage. You guys, it just seems like such a perfect fit for you. And maybe you've already talked to them and explored that, but I just wanted to give you that little inside information that they are looking to expand that program. And they do work with specific high schools and career centers. So that might be one that you could really build on that. So take advantage of it.
Okay, thanks.
So then the teacher feedback, again, I know in the interest of time, I won't go through all of this, but some of the things I want to point out, the professional development at the elementary level, they talked about wanting more curriculum-specific training, more feedback and more observations. I heard you earlier talk about observations you're doing, so they did say they wanted that. Again, I know you got a 50% turnover, it's not the same group of people, but I want to share something too. Dawn and I were at a school last week that they are using an AI program to do classroom observations. And so the way it works is teachers record themselves doing a lesson, and then they get evaluated through this AI program. They also get some coaching through the program as well, but the AI program gives them very detailed feedback about their lesson, to the point of, like, one teacher joked and said, well, I found out that I say too much, like very detailed. But here was the thing that was really interesting. Dawn and I are sitting there, we're listening to them talk about that they're rolling this out, and we're thinking, how are they gonna feel about this? They were so hungry for the feedback. They really were enthusiastic about it. The teachers were very excited, because teachers were saying things like, I really haven't got a lot of formal feedback since I was in my being, in my education program and doing student teaching. And so they want to get better at their jobs. And I think that that's the same thing we heard with your staff too. They do want feedback so they can grow and be better, at their jobs. So it was just really interesting, wasn't it? Dawn and I were like, we're going to have to Google this, look this up.
Track how many questions they ask of boys versus girls to see if there was a
it was
bias.
tough.
It
was
like
fascinating.
you tend to ask more boys in math this question than girls. It just makes you more awareness that
It's
as
like
a
Marilyn
teacher.
Quick made it AI.
I know, it was so interesting, Jill. And again, the thing that was so fascinating about it was their level of enthusiasm for it. They were so excited about it.
We thought that was rare.
Yeah, we thought that was
Most
really
teachers are intimidated to videotape of the video, and have that routine. But I think the AI element makes it a little less.
Yeah, a little less personal.
More data.
Like,
it just spits some data.
Yeah, and then they got some follow-up coaching from a real person, but they at least had this report, much like you would get like a health report or something.
Times are just
And times are changing. It also made me think about, like, gosh, you could use that with high school kids giving a presentation and letting them get feedback. It's going to be part of the jobs that they do in the future. How can we use it effectively? But it was interesting. So teachers want feedback. And so they had talked about mentoring as well. I think that's great that your first year teachers are having that opportunity at the elementary now to kind of talk and, have a little bit of a support group for themselves. I think that's important. Otherwise, on the elementary, I think the only other things I want to point out here, and you all can read some of these, but the family engagement I thought was really important. The teachers said they felt there was a need to share more positive parenting strategies with parents, instead of always it being negative and punitive. Your kid isn't doing X, Y, or Z. Sort of a positive reinforcement they thought was important. And you can see some of the things around curriculum in a small group. Like, none of this is probably a surprise to you. And the personal contact one, they all said they were told that they couldn't hug children, even though Jill had told them many times, the school leadership building leadership had told them many times, and I know this has been addressed over and over, but they just were like really dug in on this idea that they could not, hug kids and
just for contact,
yeah.
to put their hands on them, not in a disciplined way, but just in any way, like even on their back. And it was such a misconception.
It was. And it was really serious, because even we had one teacher who said, I don't even think I could separate kids if they were fighting. And we're like, you have to be able to separate kids if they're fighting. And it's not what Jill.
I'm going to counter on this because this is bogus, right?
It is.
I've got two of my principals in here. I personally delivered the training. We did have issues where an unregulated adult put their hands on a child to do a physical intervention who had no business to do so, no training whatsoever, and that was addressed. To hear this continue to be a narrative is ridiculous. I realize that those were the feelings of that moment, but we went through multiple trainings with those teachers and clarified all that. Another thing, we can't break up a fight. That's one, I want to ask that teacher, how many fights have you experienced? And since some of those teachers actually attended school here, they could probably count the number of fights they experienced on their hand in the last 10 years. But whatever the reason is, a lot of it, this is where that social media from earlier talked to, right? Like the teacher talk, where on TikTok they're hearing all these things and, we can't do this now, can't do that now. We have told our teachers, if a child needs a hug and you're okay giving them the hug, give them the daggone hug, right? a kindergartner that is crying and screaming because they just got out of their parents' car and they don't want to go away. If you're their trusted adult, we don't care.
Yeah.
Don't put your hands on a child when you are unregulated or you do not have the child's consent.
Do you have, and to be clear, you know, we knew, and especially you can see in our wording of it, we knew very well and clear that the school leadership had not told them that.
Right.
But they kept saying it, and so, you know, we shared that with Jill that, you know, hey, at some point they have to be held accountable too. If they've been told that that's not the correct discipline policy and they're not following it, you know, that's on them. And I think, so one thing I was wondering is like, do you have like a code of conduct that they need to sign that would, like at some point, could you be able to say, look, you signed this agreeing that these are our understandings of what a teacher's behavior is supposed to be in the school. Nowhere does it say you can't, you know, hug a child. So, you know, we were just, you know, when we first heard it, we went directly to Jill immediately because when people were saying, well, we don't think we could even separate kids. Well, no, you can't just let kids beat up one another. Like, that's not going to work. And she has assured us, you know, and the building leadership assured us that was not the case, but they have to be accountable too. And I think thinking about how can you know, you've given them training, once you give people training, how do you then circle back and make sure they're accountable and maybe some sort of code of conduct expectation that they have to sign.
I think some of it can stem from just society in general though too.
And it
because
was
there's
some
just
of that
such
too.
a, you know, he said, she said type deal out there that with society you just never know what's gonna be construed inappropriate.
It is.
And we have some of that as part of like our employee manual, but we also have it as part of like the safety plan, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of me doing this CPI training with them, where they're learning the de-escalation techniques. Not all of them are learning how to do a physical intervention, because that would basically be like giving every single person in a room a gun, whether they know how to use it or not, or whether they have the mindset on this is my absolute last resort. If you look at our discipline data, we do not have a large occurrence of any physical activity at all, right? We do have some of those because we are seeing some escalated behaviors. We are seeing an increase in some of the severity of our special needs population and behaviors that do come with those new diagnoses. But working through this with the adults, one of the trainings that we did August 30th, where our students were on e-learning and we were on PD, it was all safety that whole day. That included some of the precursor work for CPI. It did, because there was so much misinformation about what occurred with our elementary situation last year, we reenacted it. The HR director and I did, and said, these are the things we can't do. These are the things should have been done, right? And I think that cleared up a lot of that part, but I do think some of the apathy that we were discussing that, you know, is reflected in those classrooms, right? That was a cop-out. And it was, well, I don't want to get too close because of that. We have always done training on how to engage with students, how to high five them, give them fist bumps, right? We want to be that. If you look at our feedback from our students, right? We're their trusted adults. They feel like they belong here. If we were a clinical, sterile environment where we do not engage with them in a socially appropriate way, they wouldn't feel that way. And so, you know, we've cleared up, I think, a lot of that. And again, don't want to diminish what their feelings were. However, the over exaggeration and things, it spread like this nasty wildfire.
And I will say it was isolated to the elementary building. We did not hear that at the high school, where you might be more concerned about physical altercations. We did not hear that at all from the high school or middle school teachers. It was isolated there. And I do think they need to, there just needs to be accountability there for teachers. Not like, you know, again, we just want it. We made sure Jill was aware that was brewing there. because it was not, we don't ever take feedback from one person. It was like, and Dawn and I kept hitting on it, like, are you sure? Like, there's just like the whole, in multiple groups, and it's like, it's just, something was brewing there, but, I'm confident it's been addressed, and you have a different culture too. So as you go forward with this new culture and building this new culture and that building with 50% of the new staff, just try to prevent, I think, that from happening. Middle and high, I think, I won't go into all this, but some of the things that, there were consistent themes. They also wanted feedback, observations, the teachers did. So that was a consistent theme across all grade levels. They talked about the value, the positive relationships that they have felt that they had with students, which obviously was mirrored in what kids felt. So, so that's always good. They felt very collaborative at the middle and high. I think that the culture and that, the climate was, they thought everyone stepped up to help one another. So that was something that they highlighted. Teacher development, I already brought that up. And so I won't go through all these, because I know you guys are probably about ready to go. Student services, elementary. Again, what time is that? What time?
It's 8:22.
Okay. What time do you need to be done now?
I mean, I do have a bedtime.
I know, okay. So, one thing the oversight, what this means, I just want to be clear. This is what the staff said, and this is not uncommon. I could probably hear this in most schools. Special education staff, student support staff will say, I don't know how accommodations are being done in the classroom. I don't know if teachers are, complying with a student's IEP in the classroom. It's a very common issue that we hear in schools, and it was brought up here, and it is something to think about, that coordination between gen ed teachers and the special education staff.
Hey, we talked about that today. Yeah, and I will say at the elementary level, we do have a new special ed director, and she and Sadi, was it ICASE? Sorry, yeah. So they went to the ICASE conference, and I think that it helped Sadi kind of get more clarification, or kind of, I don't want to say the power back, where our special ed had kind of been operating kind of in isolation, right? And we are really trying to break us versus them, and integrate that. Special ed is not a separate program, right? It's integrated into every classroom, and we're understanding that. We have talked about the teacher preparation programs, and that most of them are lacking in true like special ed practicum experience, those things. And so as a team, we've been meeting with all of our SPED, how do we break that barrier, right? How do you understand, and when you have a special ed person that is doing an accommodation, it may look like this. As a general education teacher, it may also be happening but not look the same. Sure. How do we get them to talk the same language and understand, this is my interpretation of this, and this is the success we're seeing. Oh, I'm doing that same thing, I say it differently. Sure. So working on that part.
In the interest of time, I'm going to go on to the recommendations. There were a couple other slides on technology, on the front office staff, our conversations with them, and then also the board. But I will hit some of that in the recommendations. So
there was several mentions made of disrespect towards the teachers. I got the impression that was...
That did come up in the parent groups, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
That's not good. We don't want to hear that.
That was something that parents did talk about, that they were struck by. And also I think the front office staff had noticed, like, just feeling like, that kids were not being respectful to adults. And what are the consequences for that?
Part of that may be just the general trend of the time, but still.
Yeah. I will say, and one thing on the front office staff and the disrespect and stuff, one of the things the front office staff said too was that they want to be included in the de-escalation trainings. I don't know if they have been yet, but that was something that they felt would help them in their roles, because sometimes they're trying to de-escalate parents, so like they're the first line of attack.
I would say
oftentimes.
90% of the time they are.
Yeah, so they're the first ones that get it. So you can go and read through those other pages, but I'm just gonna highlight a couple of the recommendations that, thematically, I think, really you should think about. The first one was staffing, I think is really important. There's a lot of different state responsibilities, federal responsibilities as it relates to things like McKinney-Vento, Title IX. Jill gets a lot on her plate and she can multitask and do a lot. But I think making sure that there are shared leadership responsibilities so that these things, you build the knowledge base of your school, and also, not all of these responsibilities fall on, one or two people, these compliance type things. So that was something we wanted to talk a little bit about, distributing some leadership responsibilities. At the time, teachers had expressed frustration about contracts not being signed on time. I know that's been remedied for this year, but I do want to just point out for the board, like that's something that you could get dinged on in an audit. So, make sure that those contracts are signed on a timely way and, timely manner, and that there are contracts for everyone, because we've run into that with schools that have had audit findings because somebody didn't have a contract. So I alert you to the fact that that is something the auditors look for, and you could get flagged for. But I know you had hired a new HR person, and that situation was remedied for the new school year, but something to keep in mind.
I'll make commentary with the board on that later, but I will say one of the people that reported that had received their 4th copy of their contract that they weren't turning in.
Yeah.
At this point, every teacher except for 2 have returned theirs. 2 are trying to hold it hostage for negotiations.
For the
but
board's
they're not getting
purpose,
it.
I just want to alert you to, again, the impact on your audit, that this could bite you in the end, with an audit. So that's all, I just want to alert you to that. Attendance, this is your point about, let's talk about attendance. So here I have, this is a recommendation that we have, and maybe the leadership, and Jill, maybe you all have done this, but we really want to encourage you to do a deep, thorough analysis of attendance issues, to go into that level of detail, grade levels, gender, whatever, like what is it, what are the themes, common trends we're seeing? Are we seeing higher absenteeism among boys? Are we seeing higher absenteeism in the lower grades? What is surprising? Is it transportation?
So they didn't have a way to,
Yeah.
no, you don't have buses.
No, we don't.
Sorry. Is it
Yeah.
transportation? I mean, we
They
think
missed
that,
the
you
public
can.
bus, maybe.
Yeah. So really do a deep dive on this, because try to understand the root causes of it so that you can identify appropriate solutions. Your support staff, some of the folks that were involved in attendance, had expressed that parents don't understand the difference between excused and unexcused absences. They don't really understand that.
And it's probably laid right out in your handbook.
I'm sure it is.
But,
Robustly.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And again, does it even matter? Because whether it's excused or unexcused, they're still not here and they're still not learning, right? So I never really understand why schools even differentiate, because a lot of schools will just look at their attendance rate based on the unexcused. And the thing is, it's like, I'll look at school's data and you've got a kid who's missed 20 days that supposedly is excused. Now, what is going on here? And the kid doesn't have any unexcused absences. So on paper, this looks like, oh, okay, this kid looks great. They don't have any unexcused absences, but you've excused them 20 times, 40 times. I've seen something. Like, that's a lot of school that's being missed. Why is that? Is it because there's something that's gone on in the family? What is the root of this? But for whatever the reason, unexcused or excused, they're still not here and they're still not having an opportunity to learn. So we just want to really encourage you to do a deep dive on the attendance, and looking at the end of the presentation, we have some resources about attendance. I really want to plug Attendance Works.
Yes.
Attendance Works is a national organization that this is their focus, reducing chronic absenteeism. They have a ton of tools for schools to use. You can customize them from letters that you would send home, newsletters, presentations that you might use at a parent night or something about the importance of attendance, all kinds of stuff that you could.
It's research-based.
It is.
So there are some best practices about forming an attendance committee. What
Yeah.
does that attendance committee do? And, research shows, if you have an attendance committee and they focus on certain things, then typically, absences decrease. So it's free, it's
all free.
available, it's attendancework.org. You can use it or not, but
Yeah.
we just wanna let you know that's out there. And
It's
we have
free.
seen we've been to the training.
Oh yeah, it's free, and the training, I mean, you could send any of your staff, your frontline staff who are doing attendance, it's all web-based, all free. The other resources, if that's at the end of the presentation, is some study around what the Ad Council did, some research they did on attendance. And one of the things that they discovered coming out of COVID is that parents are more responsive to messaging around attendance that is about your child is missing out on the social and an emotional, value of school. They are not responding to the punitive language of your kid is falling behind, your kid is less likely to graduate. Even though we all know that's what the research says, they are not responsive to that. They're more responsive to your child, is not benefiting from all the social aspects. And maybe that's because out of COVID, people recognized, that their kids were missing that. But that is, so anyways, there's some interesting stuff in there that you might want to think about as far as messaging. How do you communicate with parents about the importance of attendance? But it definitely should be a priority. The other thing we wanted to emphasize with the online program, we talked to the staff already about this, setting some criteria for the online program about who can participate. It is not a freestanding school. You do not need to admit every child into that program who wants to be in it. Online education is not right for every kid. And if a kid is already struggling in their traditional school, why do we think letting them do autonomous work independently, is gonna help them get on track? You really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis and have some criteria for what, who is this gonna work for? So if a student is severely credit deficient, maybe this is not a good fit for them. But on the other hand, if a student is dealing with an illness or something like that, so we just really want to encourage you to look at that. What's the appropriate fit for the online program? Who does that fit? And we also want to challenge you to think about how does it fit in with your mission as a school. So we were talking internally as staff, how do they mirror this military focus or the leadership focus? How do you replicate that in an online world? I don't know. Maybe you can. Maybe you all can do it. We were just curious. How do you execute your mission in that online environment? So we want to challenge you to think about that as a staff.
Well, junior ROTC said it had to be voluntary from the student, not the parents saying, you're going to take what you want or not. So that, I think, would help those two. We don't have that anymore because can't find any instructor. There's a shortage of everything, even junior ROTC, Air Force instructors.
And some of these on professional development, I've already hit those as far as observations, de-escalation training, so I don't need to belabor that. I think most of these we hit. And then the parent engagement, again, some things to think about, the positive parenting strategies, which I talked about, the Leader in Me parent workshops, that's something you all are, looking at implementing. And I really want to encourage you to do that and look at those. We have another school up in East Chicago that is a Leader in Me school, and the parents told us they spoke very highly of the Leader in Me parent workshops. They really enjoyed it. In fact, they kept saying when are we gonna have more of them? And so trying to find some things to keep parents engaged with, feed them, provide some incentives. In a previous job, I helped facilitate a parent engagement program that was multiple sessions, like 6 sessions. And to try to get people to come back, we had an incentive at the end. If you went to all 6, you got a Walmart gift card. We gave dinner every night. I mean, some things like that, lured people in. But definitely looking at some of those kind of strategies. The positive comments, we talked to parents about this, staff talked about this as well, that so much of the communication that parents receive is negative. Billy isn't doing, X, Y, or Z. But thinking about how can we flip that? How can we let parents know when their child does something good? That could really change, the dynamics in a home even, and what an impact that might have for a child or for a parent. So thinking about those. The board, you guys are an excellent board. If I could clone you and make you all the other boards as I like you guys, I would. So you guys are really, you guys are a great board. And so just some things for you guys, looking at board policies, updating those. We talked to you guys when we met with you about the onboarding policy, process. Looking at that because you hadn't had a new board member in a while. So thinking about how would we onboard somebody, who's new. So those are just some things to think about. But I think that's it. And so here you can see the resources that we included here at the end. The other one I do want to mention, I didn't earlier, Starbase Indiana. Does anyone know about Starbase? So this is more for the elementary.
I do, yeah.
Oh, Starbase is amazing, isn't it? I think it is.
I agree, yes.
So Starbase is, I live in Fort Wayne, and so we have a very active Starbase program. And Starbase is a program that I believe it's the Air National Guard, is that right?
Yes.
It's the Air National Guard that does it. And they go into schools and nonprofit organizations and they do all these amazing hands-on STEM projects with elementary school students. And they do work in different regions, so they would work here, and I really want to encourage you to reach out to them because they do phenomenal work, just amazing projects that kids just love, and so and it's really targeted towards those elementary kids. So, take a look at that. I know they're operating in Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Gary, so you guys seem like a really good fit for them. So just I would encourage you. They're great people. All right, so I'm sorry that took a long time for you, but do you have any questions? I know we've kind of discussed things as we went, but do you have any questions?
Going back to the test scores, now I'm thinking years back when Bob Morrow came to one of our board meetings, and that was under a previous regime, a bit of ancient history. But I know he stressed to us that as public charter schools, we should expect to, let's say, barring unforeseen circumstances such as COVID epidemics, we should be certainly outpacing our public school friends. And I think early on it was almost expressed in terms of punitive, you better.
Was this one of those meetings where I've heard stories about this when Bob took all the charter schools in the Ball State portfolio and they how they compared, it was like a big chart and there was all this red, like you were in the red if you were below your district. It was a bloodshed chart.
There was that, and I think that there was also during that Bob lashing, whatever that was. That was
That might be a new term.
I mean, it kind of was, but that was also where they tried before you guys put the local district, right?
Yeah.
It was finding similar schools with similar demographics throughout this state, and you're like, wait, that's a rural farm school there.
You can thank me for nixing that. Because when I came on board, I was like, this statistically is not working. Like, you were getting compared to schools that did not makes sense. But the local district comparison is important because, as somebody mentioned earlier, you're a school of choice. And I think that's important to think about. Now, parents choose for multiple reasons. It's not like they're choosing just because you're a better school. I can go into a high poverty community where a school is, quote, an F school, a failing school, and a parent might say, well, this school's safer for my child. And so that's a compelling reason for that parent to make a choice. Understandable.
So as we close, I mean, one of the things that Jamie and I always say to schools is we can defend high growth schools all
the time,
day long. You know, if you are lower performing but you've got high growth, right? Then, you know, all day long we can say, you know, this school is valuable, they're closing the gaps, kids are growing. So, you know, I wouldn't be dismayed by the overall pass rate. You just want to make sure your kids are growing and closing gaps.
Did stress that part of it too.
Well, then maybe I bobbed last year.
No, it's different. You know what? I better text him right now before you guys get back. So I'm like, Bob, it was me. I said it.
He was very,
No,
he was
but I will
nicely
tell you,
put.
I mean,
you know, it wouldn't-
historically, charter schools, when charter schools started, and Jill, you've been around for a long time in this movement. What did we say? Charter schools said we can do it better and we can do it
Yeah,
cheaper.
there were some that did.
Better and
yeah.
cheaper.
I will
They
say
should've
we
never
said
said
do
cheaper.
more with less.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my caveat on my advocacy,
What
right?
lawmakers heard was you can do better, but you know,
Yeah, and they're gonna
cheaper.
save $1.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think it's really important, and I know Ball State supports this. I-Learn is not the end-all be-all. It's a crap test. I will go on record on that in a lot of ways. When we look at the comprehensive, and anytime you're doing data analysis, you're going to triangulate. You're going to look at our NWEA growth scores. You're going to look at our IXL diagnostics. You're going to look at that holistic picture. What we are experiencing with our students, we are seeing growth, but when you're taking a test in March and then another section in April, one, you miss about 3 months of instructional picture there, and two, not every kid does great on that test. Things that we have learned, we have kids that have, and every district is dealing with this, where if they don't know how to manipulate a mouse right, if they don't have those fine motor skills, which CDC has pushed those benchmarks back because kids aren't learning those things or developing those things, the test might not work for them.
Yeah.
Literally might not work because they can't get their point to drop on a graph. And so, you know, we looking at those scores, we're like, wow, that's really awful. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that part. But looking at where we are seeing growth for us, now how do we translate this to the dumb tests that, you know, we have to do? And that's part of doing these checkpoints and opting in, because if the state is gonna change their assessment model and chunk it, it can actually align curriculum. So instead of us teaching to a test, because we won't do that, we teach to the kid, if you have it chunked, we can actually adapt and add that to how we're looking at those kids. On face value, we can't do that with that information yet, and we've not been able to see consistent data analysis between the variations of ISTEP, I-Learn since Bob came and lashed us.
Well, and the other thing I will take credit for 10 years ago when I came to Ball State was I got rid of the weighting, because we used to have a weighting system where ISTEP at the time was worth a certain percentage of a score, and all of these variables were worth a certain percentage. And I really argued to move us to a more holistic, you know, approach of making renewal decisions, because we were coming up with this weight, like, what is ISTEP work at the time? Like, I kept saying, like, so we're saying at that time it was like 30% of your score, and, you know, it was changing, and it's like, you know, it's hard to quantify, and we do look at it holistically. We are always willing to engage in deep data discussions. Dawn and I are working with one of our schools that, boy, they have, I mean, it is like, they have data overload, boy, like they have so much data, and we are really digging in with them about really understanding their population, and we're looking at data, splicing it around, you know, how are your kids doing that have been with you 1 year versus 3 years or more, like, and so we are always willing to engage in those discussions. And when you get to the point of renewal, you know, I really want to encourage you to be ready to make that kind of case. Because, you know, keep in mind, renewal is it's not just about are you renewed or not renewed. You're not at risk of not being renewed, but we want you to get renewed for the longest period of time possible, right? That helps with the financial viability of a school, the stability of staffing. So the goal is to try to get it stretched out as many years as you can.
The bankers always put a lot of
They do.
credence
They do.
on,
So
the
we
length
want you
of
to
that.
get as far out as possible. And so what we'll be looking for in renewal is evidence of that growth, evidence of progress. We don't expect everything to be perfect. We're not naive. We worked in schools. We worked with schools for a long time. We know the dynamics, in our state and across our, communities across our state. But we want to see progress. We want to see growth. We want to come back next time and see rigorous engagement and questioning, and we really want to see that. So that's, I think it's exciting. I mean, you really, you have a lot of really positive things in place, and we're just excited to see, the next iteration for you.
Since you did say that, has Ball State made a decision on the new charter links?
No,
Okay.
not yet, because we have
Just
a
saying,
brand-
you introduced it into
I
the
know.
conversation.
Bob is working on that.
Okay, good.
Bob and I support it, but we have a new dean, so, who is very knowledgeable about charter schools. I don't know if you knew this. So she comes with a background with charter schools.
From
and-
which state? Ours?
I don't know what state. No, she's from out of state. She's
Look,
not from
see?
Indiana.
I got stipulations.
What state is she from? I can't remember.
Do we get
But
any
anyway,
good?
she has a lot of experience too with board governance of charter schools and done a lot of research on it. So she's familiar with charter schools. We were happy about that because we have somebody that doesn't have as much of a learning curve as maybe past deans have had. So yeah, it's still in the works.
Okay.
We are trying to get to the 15-year charter that the state now allows. Right now we have 7 is our max, which is an increase. We had 7 for many years. Then when school performance declined so much, Ball State went to 5. That was the max. Now we're back to at least 7. We're trying to get to the 15. So hopefully we have that by the time.
You have 2 years. 1
Yeah,
year.
we should be able to fix it by then.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I appreciate that because that does help us with funding.
It
And
does.
so the board understands that the state extended that possibility to contracts to 15 years within like the last session. Yeah. They also extended the capability for us to be part of the bond bank and do some of these loans, but to get those loans, you only have the length of your charter to pay it back. So if you borrowed $1 million, but you only have a year left on your charter, you have to pay it back within the year. And if you could pay it back within the year, why would you borrow it?
Yeah.
Anyway, neither here nor there. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. And again, as you guys have have a chance to look through it, if you have any questions, just let us know. I'm happy to follow up.
Well, I think it was a very useful examination that you made, very thorough. So.
I did have one quick question. I know we're wrapping up. I don't want to
Yeah, it's okay.
delay any longer, but I have one
We can
question.
hang around. I
We've
know.
gone later
Yeah.
than this.
Not in a while.
When Bob and John were here.
On the metrics, is there
On the what?
Well, on the metrics,
Yeah.
the test scores.
Yeah.
Is there like a resource that has like a 3 or 5 year trend or
Yeah.
what, like online or something?
And we have that as well.
Okay.
So we just gave you last year's snapshot, but yeah, we do have, and Jill has it as well.
Okay.
But we could pull together some trend analysis for you for maybe the state, the district, and you guys.
Because like
Yeah,
we have it
what I was looking at
already.
was like,
We
I'll
have
say
yeah, like are you moving? Is it moving?
one of the challenges with that trend data for us, it's better to look more at our internal where you're tracking how long the students have been with us. Because if you're looking at face value from year to year, our student population changes so much. It's not always apples to apples. You can see like the trend, right?
Yeah.
And that growth element
Yeah.
is more consistent because if they take iLearn at, Kokomo and then they come here, their data follows them. You can do that trend part.
Yeah.
But if you're just looking at like overall proficiency, it's really hard to say, well, those were the same kids in 3rd grade that were the same in 4th, 5th, 6th.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking like.
PL 221, did it go back?
Yeah, you can see an overall trend. I get what you're looking for.
Well, that and also I was looking at things like, are you moving further closer to the district score, or even further closer to
yes.
the
Right,
state?
we've
But-
done
And we
Yeah.
have that, and one of the things we look for is, and we do see that sometimes, where schools are losing ground against the district. And so, you know, that, seeing that out, you know, for a longer period of time, you can see that, or we'll see similar patterns. You know, like we'll see, what was it, 2014, everybody took a deep dive, that was a change in standards, I think, whatever year it was. And so, you know, we saw the little dip for everybody, and it was, you know, consistent. So it is helpful to see it, it's one data point, you know. As Joel said, you can dig in deeper to individual students and mobility, and I mean, we, like
Look
this.
at students who are enrolled 162 days
Yeah.
a year or more versus kids who came 2 weeks before I stepped, and that score
Yeah.
is still yours.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
There's change too.
There's different ways you can look at all of that, but I
think
got
the state changed it where
overall.
they only have to be there for 70
Yeah.
days now or something.
Well, they have the majority enrolled, and then they have the 162 days, so you're still held accountable for the 162. But when you go to the Indiana GPS, it defaults to majority enrolled, so the public is gonna see that first, and they don't know the difference
Right, like,
between the two.
Hey, those kids are only there for like 2 months.
Yeah,
We,
so,
we can do a lot, but not that.
and we also discovered majority enrolled is, like, if a kid went to 4 different schools during the year, whoever had them the most, so we thought at first the majority meant over 50%, but it's not, it's whoever had the kid for more days, but you're not held accountable on that, except the state puts it out there biggest day for the public to see, and it, they don't, you know, write in context, but anyways.
It's a convenient
How that
narrative.
works.
Oh, me too.
Oh
Yeah.
my golly.
Yeah, so we've had a real struggle with the state data stuff lately, but
Yes, lots of
Mhm.
questions.
yeah. Any other questions for us? Again, like I said, feel free to reach out. We'll put together a historical slide for you and send that.
We appreciate your time. I know it's a
Thank
little bit
you.
later for
Yeah.
y'all, so thank you.
No, we
Thank you for
can
staying
stay as
with
long as
us.
we need to,
Yep.
so don't worry about
Dave,
that.
some of us have school in the morning. It's a school night.
Jill said
Well,
she
that's
needs to go
right,
to
I don't
sleep,
have to
you
get
know.
up.
Well, we appreciate your
We all
time.
do.
Yeah.
Well, it's been too mentioning how open Jill has been about us discussing all of this and talking about this. I mean, there are some school leaders who don't have an ear, right? They're not gonna hear, and she does. So,
Yeah.
and you know, she gives us valuable feedback too. Well, maybe this isn't quite, we're here for a day or two. We're not
Yeah.
here all year. So, you know, we understand that we're a snapshot in time too. So,
Well, like
that's
the
why we just
board,
say
I mean,
everything is.
we're not here all the time.
Right.
And Jill pushed back on us, and we pushed back on her, and that's a healthy process, you know?
Because most school
so-
leaders won't do it, they'll just shut down.
Yeah, and we want
Yeah.
that. I mean, you
They don't
know,
wanna grow.
I told you after our first conversation about it, you know, I said you could feel free to. I mean, we're open to you pushing back, and you're an advocate for your school, and you know more data than we do, you know, and it's your school. But we're also
live
going to
it
push
every
back
day.
too, you know, because like we said, we can't ignore those data points either. So you know, we're I think, you know, we try to be a good thought partner in this, and like I said, you know, Dawn and I love these deep data discussions.
I think we've done a great.
Oh, it does.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe the conversation we just had with the school. I thought Dawn was like, you know, her eyes glazed over all the data we were looking at. We were really getting into the nitty gritty of individual students. Why did this individual student, you know, why are they growing but like they're not proficient? And we were looking at all this data, and it was just so interesting. And it happened to be a virtual school, which so their data is really interesting to begin with. It's such a unique population, so we learned a lot. We did.
So that's my day job, by the way. That's
Yeah?
I'm running a business intelligence team, so that's
Oh, okay.
I'm very interested.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah, you definitely have a colleague here for sure.
There you go.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, everyone. We appreciate everything you do for your kids and your
Thank you.
community.
Formally adjourned.
Have we been online all this time? Are we still on? Okay, very good. Well, then we can always replay her speech as needed. So,
See, I've heard it a little bit a few times. Hey Jamie, if you have like 3 minutes after adjournment, I wanted to tell you something about CSP.
Oh, I was just telling her I work, it's like, I just went.
Yeah,
I have to tell you about my life story and why you guys need to help me with therapy.
Okay.
CSP traumatized me.
Well, I can understand.
All right, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Ball State team, for that, and everyone, appreciate that thorough report, and I'm sure we'll move forward with that internally going forward. Let's see here, looks like that wraps up the agenda for tonight. Any further discussion for anyone?
No.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting
I'll
at,
second.
what is that, 8:56?
I'll second.
There you go.
Motion, all right, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for everyone for attending tonight. The meeting is ended at 8:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do appreciate everyone who attended, and our next scheduled board meeting is November 12th. Believe that it is on the calendar, November 12th, correct, at 6 p.m.